9:01. So I think I'm was going to give a couple of more minutes.
Board member Davis was just having some technical issues, so she's going to be logging off and logging back in. Okay. She wasn't able to turn her microphone on. Or, yeah. Oh, you got it. Great.
I got it. Thanks, Angie.
The only one, I think we're missing Natalie, and I think she was a little unsure how she'd connect. She has a wedding today. So I think I think we're good. So I think we'll begin if that's okay. And they've said the recording is started, right, Jerry? I think so. And all right.
I believe so as well.
Welcome to our August Utah State Board of Education Law and Licensing Committee meeting. My name's Carol Lear. I have the honor of chairing this committee, and with the help of all of these committee members. So just for the record and for some people's awareness, would the committee members please introduce themselves? We'll start with Vice Chair Randy Booth.
Randy Booth from District 13. I represent Nebo School District and Provo City School District.
Matt?
Thank you. Matt Hymas from District 3. I represent West Valley Magna area, the Tooele County and Juab County schools.
Great. And Vice Chair of the Board, Davis.
Davis, and I represent most of northern Utah County, currently down in Alpine District, currently down into Nebo area, and next year we'll move up into Jordan area.
Yeah, my district's moving also. And I do see Natalie Klein who's logged on. Natalie, can you just tell us?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm Natalie Klein. I am District 11 currently, and over Jordan School District and parts of Alpine and Canyons District as well.
Thank you. Thanks for being here when you've got such a busy day. It's really helpful. These committees of 4 are not as productive as committees of 5. So thanks so much. I'd also like to right off ask the committee members, we have a number of people wanting to speak on 2 or 3 different items, and some of them have requested to speak at when their item comes up. Others haven't expressed a preference. Do the committee members have a strong preference about when you'd like to hear public comment?
I don't, Carol. I'd leave it at your discretion.
Natalie?
I would like to hear it this morning if everybody's on that wants to speak, just because I will have to drop off early.
So you'd like to hear it at the beginning?
That would be preferable to me.
And Cindy, do you have any preference? Randy?
I don't have a preference other than people might be looking at the agenda and planning on the time that was posted and then tuning in, closer to the end than the beginning but I'm fine either way, really.
Okay.
Can we do those that are here first, and then you can do the others later if they come later?
In deference to Natalie's time schedule, oops. Oh, that scared me. Let's start with the public comment then. And if I'll make this because this makes it harder when we're on Zoom. It's not like being in person where you can, you as the public commenters can maybe participate a little bit more. If time permits and there is interest from the committee, then we may hear from you again at the time of the item, if that seems appropriate. So let's start right now then with public comment, and you're going to have to help me, Kathy, because I know you've sent me several emails, but I haven't
Carol,
copied them. Yes.
Are you still going to allow others if they join later to give public comment?
Sure. There was nothing that said they had to necessarily be in, but we'll have to maybe limit their comment depending on how many there are. And it's easier to prepare for a time if if they let us know in advance. So, so
Carol,
Kathy, yes.
we have three. Oh, it looks like Royce is just joining. And David, is Kelly Kohler one of yours?
Yeah, she's with the Head Start item.
Okay, thank you.
And some of those people, David, were maybe there as to, they may not have prepared public comment. They were just here to be informational, right? If we needed them.
Yeah, should you have any questions?
Right. So do you know if any of them, any of the health department people were asking to make public comment?
Not that I'm aware, no. That all would
Okay.
have gone through Kathy, I think.
Thank you. So Kathy, I think we can start with the others and,
Okay, we have Howard Stevenson,
okay.
Lynn Taylor, Royce Van Tassel. I haven't seen the other two on CTE.
Okay, let's start with Mr. Stevenson and then go to Mr. and then you said somebody else, and then Royce. So Howard, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you. My comments are related to the bill on the implementation of SB 127, the reading software, reading legislation sponsored by Senator Milner and Representative Last. I'm happy to go at the same time as the subject, if that would make it easier for people to remember when we get there, because but I'll do what you say as the chair.
That's really nice of you. I think, I actually think because Natalie Klein may have to drop off, she'd probably like to hear your comments. And so I would ask you to talk now, if you would be so kind, and also, and then if it's necessary or time permits, we can have you again when that item comes up.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking today as a board member of Bridge Elementary, which is impacted by the rule that you are considering. And is it clear which rule we're talking about?
I think it would be helpful if you would tell us, or I can look for it myself. But I think you mean item 2.8 for our purposes, R277-496, reading software licenses.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
So I was the Senate sponsor in 2012 of Utah's EISP reading software program, which after a few fits and starts has been amazing the way since we were the first state to pass the statewide digital teaching and learning master plan. The staff at the USBE has really been helpful in getting schools to use the software and integrate it with their reading instruction. And it is part of the reason we rank 6th highest in the nation in reading performance. However, 6th highest in the United States is sort of like being the tallest building in Tooele. We still have a long way to go, and that was acknowledged in the committee discussions on Senate Bill 127. At that time, the real concerns that were expressed about the implementation of the bill was whether schools and teachers would be given the flexibility that was needed to implement it, rather than being forced to accept things that they may not be ready for. A part of the bill required a 0.4 effect size, which was in the professional learning part of the code, not in the EISP part of the code. And so no one in the committee, or no one, in fact, that I have talked to who helped to put the bill together, including the sponsors, understood that this would have such a drastic effect on changing the software that schools have been using effectively. In fact, Paul Sweat, who was on the committee that put the bill together and is in Wasatch School District, which is our leader in reading results, and also has been identified nationally as one of the leaders in the use of digital teaching and learning. Paul Sweat made this comment: let's make sure that we let districts have flexibility with implementation. They can pick some of the timelines, timeframes of making this work. It may look different by each district. We need flexibility to make it work. And throughout the meeting, there were other people who expressed concerns like that. And Senator Milner said, yes, this is teamwork. We're not going to force anything. Well, now districts, about half of our schools are going to be forced to change their software this session in August for those kids who are below benchmark, which will make it very difficult for them to do the science of reading, which was the real focus of the bill, to really get science of reading deeply taught with our teachers so that they can be effective in using the research that has been proven to get kids at grade level. In talking with one of the members of the expert panel created by this law, he told me that the 0.4 effect size was taken from John Hattie's work, and it requires not just one or two evaluations to establish a 0.4 effect size, but it requires a meta-analysis. And none of the software that has been shown and is being forced on schools to be used beginning in August has had the meta-analysis necessary to establish that 0.4 effect size. So this requirement seems to be a surprise by everybody except for the teaching and learning staff at the USBE.
Can I get you to wrap up in about a minute, less than a minute?
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'm asking, and by the way, Bridge Elementary, we've been using a software program that was not one of the two that's been improved 0.4 effect size. And our kindergartners, for example, at the end of this most recent year, we've only been in operation for 2 years. Our kindergartners, we got 88% at grade level with a software that's not part of that. And so what I'm asking you to do is to not put this rule in place at the time, but instead to hear from the expert panel about what they feel is necessary to establish that 0.4 effect size, and to back off. When the USBE, when staff authorized the second provider, it actually took about half of our schools off the hook for having to make a change. But the other half of the schools are being required to change their software. And that was not the promise that was made in committee. We have many legislators who are upset by this, thinking that the deliberative process of our committees was subverted because this was not made known. And neither did the bill even contain any of the parts of the legislation related to the EISP software program. Instead, it was under professional learning. So I would ask you that you get the experts in, the expert panel, to ask them their opinion on this, and to not force this on our schools so immediately. It's just hard to do.
Yeah, I hear you. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for that comment. And I'm trying to stop this. There we go.
Can I ask one quick question? I know this isn't the discussion time, but
I know we don't want to discuss it, but it really is quick.
It is quick. I'm just wondering what the EISP software is that you are referring to that your school used.
Can you give her a short answer, Senator?
Yes, we are currently using Imagine Learning, but it's not about that. It's about the others that are being forced to do that as well, because there are 3 other programs that schools are being forced to make a change. even though we're getting great results with the software we're using.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. We will have a staff response about this when we discuss the item. And I'm hoping the board members can keep these comments in your heads because I just don't want to get too out of order in terms of responding to public comment. So we'll just have to hold those thoughts until we have a very helpful response and further explanation from our staff people. So moving along, Kathy, I think I had somebody and then Royce. Is that right?
Sarah Ware and Royce are both on.
Okay. And those are only two more. Go ahead.
And also Lynn.
Taylor.
Yes, Lynn Taylor. I'm wondering if I'll check if the other is Lisa Bruns.
And I'm just wondering, Royce and Sarah, which you're speaking to the CTE item, right?
That's correct.
Which one of you wants to go first?
I can introduce it briefly. Sarah's really the expert.
Go ahead.
Again, my name is Royce Van Tassel, Executive Director of the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. I want to start by expressing gratitude for your staff and the rest of the committee who have been very helpful to work with us this week. As Sarah will describe, there have been some challenges in communication around this really up until this week. But we've been able to, I think, address many, though not all of the concerns. We charter schools have a significant CTE presence. We want to be part of this community and serve our students well. And the stretching that is anticipated in the proposed amendments to R277 911 are a direction that we're thrilled to go in. We are a little bit concerned that there is a little bit of a donut hole effect. I think that that's unintentional, but there's a donut hole effect in one element, and some concerns about imposing federal standards on what historically have never been part of the state uses of dollars. And with that, I will turn it back to you, but we're grateful for your the changes that have been proposed in the draft 2, and hopeful that we can continue to improve all of the CTE programs across the state.
Thanks very much, Mr. Van Tassel. Ms. Ware, would you like to speak now?
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Royce, for getting that started. For those of you who do not know, my name is Sarah Ware. I am currently the CTE director for 15 charter schools. And I just will echo the gratitude that I have for the work that's gone into this week and the discussion around CTE. It's been exciting, and it's been exciting to be part of this process, and grateful for your time and effort in what you do for students, on behalf of students, because that's why we're all here, right? Is on just trying to help students, and just in the discussion we have around particularly the students that I have the chance to oversee with these 15 charter schools, and how this rule will impact them. And so thank you for the work already that's gone through to help with that funding chart, to help that to be a little bit more equitable for everyone involved. Stretching's involved, and I'm looking forward to that stretch, and looking forward to the further conversation on how the support from the department and the staff on how that's going to happen. So just thank you. As Royce mentioned, there are 2 items that I think need further discussion, and just that there's 2 requirements that are federal requirements that have been always federal requirements, and I just would like that discussion on just the understanding of why those federal requirements are being added to state requirements. I feel it's unnecessary. The other item to mention is the item around the consortium. So currently how it stands, 10 charter schools in the consortium, and then 5 WPU for every additional charter school above 10. And then the rule is now saying that 15 is capped. I feel like there's more discussion around that cap, because I just feel there's that just a little leeway time, that between 16 and 19, what's going to happen between then? I'm the boots on the ground. I know what it feels like to have 15, and to think about adding 3 more. I have a staff that's with me right now that works 17 hours. And so I think about adding 15 more without that additional funding to help that staff member to be able to help support in that way. Could be challenging. And so I just see that what's going to happen between that 16 and 19. Just want to, again, further discussion on what we could do to help support that. I am not seeking favoritism. I am not seeking that. I am not out to recruit. Only recruiting I ever did was with that 10 to get this started. But really, truly, this has grown naturally, and I want to help it continue to grow naturally. And with that, the support of funding. And so, like I said, just those 2 items. And I feel it's important to just mention one actual kind of big picture item in just this discussion. I've appreciated the week long we've had about talking CTE and CTE funding in this rule. I've appreciated it. I feel there's a lot of that could have happened beforehand. And so I just hope as we continue to move forward that we can be partners in this, and that we can move forward and talk about this before. So then we don't only have, I feel like we're just really jam packing a lot of conversation in a week that we could have had, and weeding out some of my questions prior to. And so again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your effort on behalf of students. I just look at this room, and all of us are here to help students. And I just think that's phenomenal. And I feel the energy, and I'm excited to be a part of this group. And so thank you for letting me be here this morning. So
Thank you very much, Ms. Ware. That's really helpful information. Kathy, do we have anyone else?
Yes, we have Lynn Taylor,
Okay.
also on CTE.
Oh, also, okay. Ms. Taylor, would you like to speak, and please introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, I'm Lynn Taylor, international and national recognized education researcher. It is my joy to be with you this morning. I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak to you. My concerns are on the 2.9 agenda for the career tech education. I have 4 points. Number 1, local education agencies are not exclusive to our schools. According to the nationally recognized Every Student Succeeds Act, local education agents can be any entity, business, service, or program of outside influence on our schools. As such, this opens up the way for public-private partnerships. And this is a direct violation of 20 U.S. Code Section 1232A, where any type of overreach based with federal to state funding is prohibited in education. Number 2, this will also tie back to the Every Student Succeeds Act, and especially Utah's approved plan, where page 17 of the Every Student Succeeds Act clearly mandated that all education had to be aligned to the same post-secondary readiness standards as laid out in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And by doing that, what it did was it attached itself not only to public education, but to all choices of education from cradle to grave. And by tying to WIOA, this is also putting skill-based labor, which is outcome-based labor, which is not what education is supposed to be about. It takes the focus off of academics and puts it clearly on job training. Number 3, the U.S. Department of Labor not only received increased power in the Every Student Succeeds Act, but is a member of the International Labor Organization. And this particular organization is a partner of the UN, and the plan is to merge education and labor to meet the Sustainable Development Goals number 4 and number 8. And so the regions in this particular CTE update will play right into this plan of overtaking in America. By uniting ed and labor, you are also combining data tracking from the Student Longitudinal Data System to the Workforce Quality Data Initiative that also contributes to the gutted FERPA, which had all of its data sharing parameters removed by a former administration. This not only violates our Constitution, but again, the 20 U.S. Code Section 1232A, because the data security has never been restored. And finally, my fourth point, this update also requires for extracurricular clubs to be aligned. The clubs are often open to outside of the public system as well. Skills USA, DECA, FBLA were some of the ones that were currently listed, but it also has an added concern of knowing that any other type of club with any sort of agenda can also be included and aligned with this as well. So what if the ideology of that particular club doesn't mesh with the family? This leads to some serious questions as to what Utah is willing to do to its students and families as far as American attitudes, values, and beliefs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that thoughtful comment. Ms. Davis, Member Davis.
Thank you. Can we ask Chair, can we ask Lynn Taylor to submit those comments via writing so we can have the Office of Attorney General review those for our legal responsibilities, and we can better just review. That was a lot in a very short time.
A lot of factual information. I agree.
To process.
Ms.
Yes,
Taylor?
it was a lot, and I could have done a lot more, but I will be happy to email that to Kathy. That's not a problem.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, you're welcome. If
Thank
there's
you very
anything
much.
else I can do, I've got plenty of research.
I can see that. Thank you for that request, and thank you for your comment. Thank you for those who provided public comment. That's a huge contribution to our meeting. We'll begin on item 2.1, a data sharing agreement discussion, and you just took away my screen. The item number is, again, a data sharing agreement between Salt Lake County Health Department, and an extension of that is being requested. And we have with us David Soleil from the USBE staff, who will introduce this, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lear. So I'm David Soleil. I'm the Chief Privacy Officer here at the Utah State Board of Education. I also have with me Jeffrey Eason from the County Department of Health, should I need to phone a friend on any of the more detailed aspects of the work they do. But to remind everyone, so in November 2020, really when the school year was, the first full pandemic school year was starting, the county health department reached out to us asking if they could get information on where students who had tested positive for COVID were enrolled. So they already know the identities of these students, but due to multiple school district boundaries, or students going to schools that are not the ones that would be based on their home address, they struggle to always figure out the right individual to contact to let the school know that they had a positive case of COVID. So it's my understanding the way it would work is they contact a school nurse and say, hey, do you have this student? And they'd say, nope, not us. Try maybe this school. And they'd play this game and go around. And, so it was kind of a time is of the essence issue where they would eventually figure out who the student was, but perhaps no longer in time for the school to be able to take action to help with contact tracing and, inform parents. Ultimately, I think was what it was, that students maybe needed to self-isolate because they've been near a positive case. Or I think also certainly the same would go for teachers as well, since they could also contract the disease. Now, obviously, we are no longer, I think, in the same place we were in fall 2020. It seems that a lot of the outcomes regarding COVID are much improved. A lot of people are returning, I think, to the kind of lives they had prior to the start of the pandemic. With that said, the county health department is still required to do this kind of contract tracing for this disease. And so they will continue to do so. The question is, again, how timely will this be? So that is still the purpose of this data exchange. It is, I believe, currently slated to expire in December of this year. The request is to make it go through the entire next school year. And I think I personally would recommend this since the only information that they don't already have on these students is just the school of enrollment. They already know the identity of any child who is testing positive for COVID. And I think even though, current variants of the virus appear to be less deadly and less likely to put someone in the hospital, they still have a great capacity to disrupt. I think of an outbreak in a school occurring where staff will have to stay home sick just because they're too sick to go into work. And I'm already aware that our schools are really struggling from a personnel point of view, staffing every single position. And so this is, I think, a small step to help alleviate some of that burden. While really, again, like it's very procedural. The county health department will get this information. It's just the question of how quickly we can get it to them. And
thank you.
That's
Thanks so much, David. Were you planning to hear from Mr. Eason right now, or were you thinking that he'll just be available as a resource?
Yeah, as my phone a friend, depending on board members' questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's start with Member Hymas.
Thank you, Chair Lear. Can you just answer what other data are you looking for? Are you just getting COVID data, or are you gathering other data from students?
May I respond, Chair Lear?
Sure. Oh, yes. Please feel free to respond.
Okay, thank you.
In a committee meeting. Go ahead.
Yes. So in this case, what we do is we're just giving them enough information on the student to be able to match, and then just also their school. So we're not collecting any information from the county health department ourselves. That became an issue also. Like, we didn't want to know who is testing positive for COVID. We don't need that information. So it is really just us giving the county health department the school of enrollment. So we create a file and send it to them, I think, once a month, so that they can look that information up themselves.
And follow-up, Chair?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, you give the school where they were enrolled, I think you give their age, and then like an address or a community area. I don't know. I can't remember if it's a specific address. Can you help me remember? Because we talked about this a while ago, right? Can you help me remember?
Yeah, I'm wondering if Jeffrey, because you're the one actually, I believe, getting the data. I was under the impression, like, I think it would probably be the birthday so that they can just match and make sure that they have the right student. And the address, I think, would probably also be exact for that reason. But again, Jeffrey, I think maybe you can respond to that.
Yeah, thank you so much for representing so well, Mr. Soleil. So yes, what we are receiving are name, date of birth, and address as well. So that's in effort to match with our case information, our disease notification information that we receive as public health entities. When we match, we're able to discern, because we also receive that school enrollment information, and that is what we are able to create into classification or notification list, which we send to individual school nurses through a secure and confidential process.
Thank you. Just to wrap up, Chair, if that's okay. A couple of things. You're probably well aware, I think everybody is well aware, that parents are more protective now, it seems, than ever before about their and their family's data. And so I just want to put that out there, that this is not a game. This is obviously, right, I'm saying things that you already know, but we want to be very protective about what we're doing and make sure that's actually making a difference with data. And then secondly, you mentioned that this expires December 2023. You want to make sure it goes through the school year of next year. So why not just end at June 2023 and instead of trying to split? Or are you trying to go through into June of 2024? Help me understand that comment of entire next school year. Is it entire? Maybe I'm thinking entire next, meaning this year, and you're thinking next. Help me understand that.
David or Jeffrey, which one of you?
Yeah, to clarify, so it's currently set to expire December 2022. So in a couple of months this year.
Oh.
And so that is a good question. I'm not sure exactly why we wouldn't just say through July as written. I think because the original version was in November, and so someone just decided December of the following year. I don't know if Jeffrey, you have a compelling reason for that. I don't see a reason why it couldn't be through just July of 2023.
Member, I'm sorry, I can't see your name
It's
anymore.
Member Hymas, but you're okay. You can just.
Thank you, Member Hymas. So the reason that I think that this is beneficial to look at going on a calendar year is for the exact situation we're in now. School is out, but we are moving over to request this data. It ends in December. We'd still have the ability to do some of our work earlier on in the year to make sure students and staff are able to be notified, protected if we indeed do need that. So I think that that's a compelling reason to keep it on a calendar year rather than keep it to the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I have another comment from Member Klein.
Yes, sorry, it doesn't have to do with this. I'm just, I got a text from Lisa Bruns, who was waiting in the waiting room to give her public comment, and nobody saw her, but she was there and would like to still give her public comment, maybe after this agenda.
Thank you, Natalie, and I apologize, and we'll hear from her after we're through with this item. So,
Member Lear, just while you're talking about that, Board Member Klein, if she was the person with the phone number, she didn't have her name in there, and I kept asking her to change her phone number to her name. So if you could let her know that.
That is her.
Okay.
Right.
I've messaged with her and just confirmed and let her into the meeting. And so I just send a message, but I just would wait till this item was done. Sorry.
Thank you.
Perfect. That's great. Let's move on. And we'll have her, she will not get left out. No public comment left behind. So please go ahead. We were just talking about the dates. And did you get the answer to your question? Then you seem to, Matt.
I did. Yes, thank you.
Okay, now, Natalie, anything else? You're muted. And Member Davis.
Yeah, I just kind of want to reiterate, when we did this a year ago, the reason that I felt okay voting for this was because this doesn't give any additional data or information that the health department doesn't already have the opportunity to get. They have most of it already at their fingertips, except for the school location, and they can get that. It's the amount of time that it's going to take on the personnel end, on their end, and also on the personnel end of the schools. And because things were moving so quickly in this densely populated area, it was a way to just help the workload of the people and the personnel. I'd be okay to do this for this school year, but I'll be honest, if the trend continues away from, large numbers, pandemic types of numbers, I would probably be hard pressed to continue it beyond this school year. Just because I don't know that there would be a need unless someone came and presented a really compelling need.
Member Hymas, do you have another comment?
I'm ready for a motion, I believe, Chair.
Okay. Mr. Easton, I'm sorry, I was a little distracted with getting another person into the meeting. So I don't call, is it a huge problem for the health department if this current agreement ended in July 1 or June 30th, 2023? And then if needed, we could have this same discussion. Is that a problem for you?
No, not at all. We're happy to come back and speak to this group. And I do want to share one thing, if I may, Chair. Because of this agreement last year, we were able to notify on 26,000 potential cases prior to going to school. And that was done in about 8,000 notification list. So this has really helped to not only decrease public health workload, also the school nurses, as we would typically work with the school nurses for each and every individual case. So this has really been a helpful process, and we've seen that it's decreased transmission within schools, protecting those students and staff. So we want to thank you for this partnership. It's really been beneficial for all.
Thank you. I agree. I think there's no reason to make another agency's work any harder, especially in difficult times. Member Hymas, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, but I want to clarify. I'm okay with the end date being the full calendar year into December 31 for reasons that Jeff gave. If the board is, I don't know if there was a hinted at amendment, but I'm ready to make a motion without.
You go ahead and make your own, and it can be amended if that's necessary. Go ahead.
I move that the committee approves the amended agreement with Salt Lake County Health Department and recommends that the board approve the amended agreement with the Salt Lake County Health Department.
I second Booth.
Thank you, Randy. The motion is that the board approves the data sharing agreement extension through December 2023 with the Salt Lake County Health Department. Any other comments to that motion? I see none, so members, please vote. And I see 1, 2, 3, 4 in the affirmative, and I'm not seeing Natalie still on the line. So
Board Member Klein voted no.
okay, so that would be four yays and 1 nay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, David. Thank you, Jeff, for your succinct comments. Very helpful to have you here. We're moving to item number 2.2, and this is another data sharing agreement with Utah Head Start Association that includes an amendment. And David,
were we going to have public comment?
oh, yes. I'm so sorry. Thanks, Natalie. We did have a person who, through no fault of anyone, came in a little late to our public comment. I believe
Lisa Bruns.
Lisa Bruns, and so we will hear a public comment. She's also speaking about CTE, and we'll hear from her now. And Lisa, please take no more than 3 minutes.
For sure. Thanks. Good morning. I'm here today to share my concerns about the proposed action to repeal current language about secondary CTE or career technical education standards and to reenact completely new language. One of my first concerns is that the proposed new language in R277-911-3, Section 5D, 8, A through F, and that's a lot, starting on line 551, stating that LEAs must demonstrate that they, quote, conducted CTE programs consistent with board policies and state and federal laws pertaining to CTE program access that prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, sex, and disability, end quote, leaves out previously protected groups mentioned in the current language. I'm sure it was just an oversight, but discrimination against both religion and creed has been omitted, and you may want to address that. Second, this new CTE language is a clear violation of our state constitution as well as federal law. Like Lynn Taylor mentioned, 20 U.S. Code Section 1232A, prohibition against federal control of education, strictly prohibits overreach by any federal department, agency, or related group for educational resources, curriculum, advice, guidance, etc. The proposed changes will put this into play. It also violates the 9th, 10th, and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution because it requires our state to give away its sovereignty by accepting federal money that comes with all sorts of regulations and guidelines. Utah will have to kowtow to the federal government for federal dollars to go under federal rules and abide by federal statutes, thus nulling and voiding our state constitution's power. I'm also genuinely concerned that these funds will supplant LEA funding, not supplement it. Additionally, this language allows public-private partnerships with their varying political agendas to direct education as well as related educational experiences like after-school programs and clubs, which will all be aligned to skill-based education. This new CTE language will create tech centers, not schools, and direct our counselors to become salespeople for career tech education. This all plays into what, like Lynn Taylor mentioned, the Every Student Succeeds Act mandate, that all education must be aligned to the same post-secondary readiness standards laid out by the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, setting up literally a cradle-to-grave career trajectory. It will require any and all educators to be credentialed in post-secondary readiness standards, which have been completely hijacked by organizations like the American School Counselors Association, who stated in their 2021 Student Mindsets and Behaviors Guidelines that in order to be considered college and career ready, students are now required to not only adopt what are considered the correct Marxian mindsets, which have been crosswalked through Learning for Justice, but also demonstrate their commitment to social justice activism. Considering Utah has hitched its wagon to ASCA standards, that means that our state's seamless education to workforce pipeline, including the CTE path, have been hijacked, as well as this agenda is already reflected in our standards, our assessments, and our accountability. These new CTE standards will further entrench that and pigeonhole students through testing and assessments that gather information on their skills or lack thereof. Utah has fully committed to this cause by aligning the competencies employers desire the most to what our education system is teaching its students, all through a social emotional learning lens. In closing, let's not reduce our students through CTE programs to mere cogs in the wheel of career workforce development. They deserve better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for adhering to the time request. With that, we will be discussing this item in a few minutes, in a while, we hope. So you're welcome to stay. Our next item is another data sharing agreement. Item 2.2, Utah Head Start Association Amendment. And I'm assuming, David, you'll also explain this one.
Yes, I will, Chair Lear. So again, for those who missed the earlier item, David Slay, Chief Privacy Officer at the Utah State Board of Education. I also have on this item Kelly Kohler from Department of Workforce Services and Teresa Oster from Utah Head Start. They're my phone a friend should we want to get into the details there. But somewhat similar situation as the last one. So the board approved a data sharing agreement with Utah Head Start Association in 2019. And this was largely to give them keep data on students who are enrolled in Head Start. So Head Start is under federal law, they are required to demonstrate outcomes-based benefits to the program. Also, several Head Start programs within the state are part of a grant within the state of Utah. So there's state expectations there as well. So some of the changes to this agreement, I think, are non-substantive. For example, it has the name of the head researcher in the version from 2019. That changes over at Head Start every couple of years. So right now that's Teresa, who's here if you have any questions for her. But the largest change, the largest amendment that they have requested is that in addition to the keep data on Head Start students, they would also like to receive PEEP data. So that's the preschool entry exit profile data, as well as their third grade assessment data. I believe, and Teresa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was for the Acadience data, what we used to call DIBELS. This, I believe, makes sense from a, we want longitudinal data. The PEEP data can, that's kind of the pre-data, so we can see where the student was at. KEEP lets us see where they were at when they were actually in kindergarten. And then we were able to get that bigger picture, or Head Start would be able to get that bigger picture with the third grade data to be able to see, where are they at 3 years on? How much more prepared would a student who went through Head Start be compared to a control group of students who didn't go through Head Start? This would also, the other thing is to extend the agreement through 2027. So that's the basics of this. I think it aligns well with the board's strategic plan, particularly related to early childhood education. And so I would recommend that this committee pass it out favorably.
And would you like Teresa to speak to that also, or would Teresa like to speak to say any more, or do you think David covered it for now? Or the other person, Teresa and
Kelly
Kohler, right? Either one of you want to speak to this, or you want to just wait for questions?
Well, we just want to thank the State Board of Education. This is Kelly Kohler. I'm the State Director of Collaboration for Head Start, and I work under the Department of Workforce Services, Office of Child Care. So we just really want to thank everyone for sharing this data in the past. It really has helped inform our practice and made a big difference in some of our school districts and how we prepare children for school. And we look forward to getting more longitudinal data, as we really feel like it will help us really inform our program design and management and how we work with our schools and better help us prepare children for schools. We were able to really see in the past we were able to look at like the attendance data and the PEEP score and the PEEP and KEEP scores, and really be able to see that there was a very predictive outcome there, that children who attended 90% or more were prepared for school and those. So then we're able to course correct by seeing that data, triangulating it, seeing it better. We're able to better prepare children for school, for Utah schools, for the local, at a state level, we're able to better understand what school readiness is, and we're able to understand at the local, work more closely with our local districts and preparing those children for school.
Thank you, Kelly. I have a quick question for one of you, and Matt, I see your hand was up, so I'll go to you in just 1 second. But I'm wondering if the parents of the students who enroll in Head Start are notified that the data are shared between the school and the health department.
Yes, when parents when parents come, they do sign, and which allows us to be able to share data with many partners. We're also under, federally mandated to have these type of data sharing agreements in place. And so to be able to look at longitudinal data to make sure that we are preparing children for school. Without it, it's really difficult for us to be able to do that. So yes, each Head Start program does have language within the parent consents.
Okay.
The parents are aware that this is happening.
Thank you. And then just a quick follow-up to that, would it be safe to say if without the federal money, that the Head Start wouldn't be able to function? Is that true?
Yes, that is very true.
And
we don't receive any state
with
funds.
the data that the feds want for their money, that we are able to continue with Head Start. Member Hymas has a question, please.
Just out of curiosity, I know you're looking for longitudinal. It looks like it was approved in March. I don't know when you started getting this data. I'm wondering if you have anything, not right now, but maybe that you could send via email over to me to see the difference that kids who have started in Head Start compared to their peers who have not. I would love to see where this data approval that we're doing, what good it is actually doing. I know it's one thing to say it over a meeting, but I'd love to see the data just so that I have a better understanding, and that maybe, if it's great, I'd love to continue to promote the Head Start program. So thank you.
Do you have a report to that effect, Kelly or David? I think you're muted, Kelly.
This is Teresa.
Yeah.
I could speak to that. I could provide you data because Davis Head Start is part of a school district. We have been able to have access that data, and we've been tracking our students, and I'd be more than happy to share our outcome data and how we see the correlations between attendance and other variables that really impact the school readiness based on children that attend Head Start and those that don't. So,
that's a great offer. Thank you, Matt. Would that be helpful to you?
Yes, thank you.
And if you'll just, Teresa, if you'll send that to Kathy Helgeson, you have her contact information, then she can pass on the information to the committee and board members. Member Davis?
Yeah, I just from a practitioner standpoint, it takes a lot of time to do these assessments. And so, if these folks are willing to start working on the skills that are needed for the children and can spend more of their time in instruction rather than in reassessing to get baselines, I think it's wise, especially if the parents are already understanding and permitting that to happen. So I'll go ahead and move that the committee approves the amended agreement with the Utah Head Start Association and recommends that the board approve the amended agreement with the Utah Head Start Association.
So the motion is that the committee approves the agreement with the Utah Head Start Association as amended. Any further discussion to that motion? I see none. Would committee members please vote? And is someone seeing, let me see if I see, there would be Randy. No, and Randy, I see a vote, I think. Let me see. Yes, I do. So the vote is 4-1, Member Klein voting nay. Moving on to the next item. Thank you very much, David, for your preparation. Thanks to those visitors with Head Start and Health Department, and we look forward to seeing additional data on that. Item 2.3, this is only a continuation. Lest you think we have an exciting topic, it isn't. It's action item R277-474, school instruction and sex education. We're just being asked to continue this or recommend continuing this rule. So Jody Parker, I'm thinking, is the designated speaker.
If you don't mind, I'd start first, if that's okay, Chair Lynn.
That's just great.
Just wanted to, Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent of Policy. Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to give a little bit of background and reminder that we have rules that come up periodically for 5-year review. This rule was amended 3 years ago, but we did not file a continuation at that time. So it has been amended within the last 5 years. But this is the board's opportunity for the 5-year review. So as you may know, section 53G10-402 requires the board to establish rules with regards to sex education and instruction. This rule outlines the requirements for USBE, LEA governing boards, and educators. And there have been no changes to the code since the last update to the rule about 3 years ago. In addition, just as a reminder, each LEA completes annual assurances demonstrating compliance with the rule, and staff believe that the process is working well and that the rule continues to be necessary, and just recommends that the rule be continued at this time without any additional amendments. And as you mentioned, Board Member Lear, Jody Parker, who is our health specialist, is also available to answer questions or give additional background information if requested.
Okay. Thank you very much, Angie, for that introduction. Jody, do you have anything to add to the introduction, or do you just want to be available should we have more specific questions?
Jody Parker, Health Education Specialist. Deputy Superintendent Stallings gave the very thorough background.
Okay, thanks so much. I see a question from Member Klein with a darling baby in her arms. I am so jealous. So go ahead.
Oh, thank you. This is my 7th little grandchild. I'm babysitting at the moment while my daughter gets ready for the wedding. So I do have a couple of questions or possible amendments. Is this a good time to bring those up?
It would be a good time. Can we,
okay.
So I have to ask Angie about protocol. If this is only advertised as a continuation, would that preclude amendments?
No, the amendments are not precluded. However, this would be up to you and the committee's discretion. With the 10 items we do have on the agenda today, one option you might want to consider is continuing the rule today, because it is time sensitive and it will sunset if we don't get that filed. I think it's sunsetting late sometime in September. Maybe what an opportunity could be is to for board members to share with us any amendments or substantive changes they'd like to make, and we could bring the rule back next month for substantive changes. But it's at your discretion, Board Member Lear. I do not have any amendments that board members have shared with me right now.
I think they're pretty simple.
If we can see let's see how simple, and I hope you would be open or receptive to that suggestion from Deputy Stallings.
Yes, that's fine.
They don't look too simple. So go ahead.
Okay, so my first one is just, and I don't have language or where to put this in, but I feel like we should have a reference in here to the sensitive materials, HB 374 law, which I don't know that that's in here, but wherever that would be most appropriate. And then the other one is in the last paragraph where it talks about spontaneous questions. I feel like that has opened a can of worms in a lot of schools from what I've been hearing, as far as allowing teachers to talk about things that they wouldn't otherwise be allowed to talk about. And some of the, things like gay pride flags being hung in the classroom, or signs that prompt questions, spontaneous questions from the students in a strategic way, so that teachers can then talk about those things where they weren't allowed to without it being a spontaneous question. Or things like in the second step social emotional learning program, where there's a PowerPoint screen at the end of a lesson that gives questions that the second step program then prompts the students to ask their teacher, which opens the door again for teachers to talk about things that they have not been allowed to, because the teacher didn't bring it up. It was on the PowerPoint and the students were asked to ask their teacher. And so they're finding ways around that. And I feel like we need to put in some kind of amendment that makes it clear that spontaneous questions that are contrived or prompted are not truly spontaneous, and that any question that is not allowed normally, if it's asked by a student or require a teacher to answer something they wouldn't normally be allowed to answer, that it should be redirected to the parents or to a school counselor, perhaps.
I thank you for giving us a preview. I think those are kinds of questions that would merit more discussion. So I would ask if it's okay if we can continue this, then we could address those kinds of questions. I want to remind us that this exception sort of is specific to sex ed, and then also HB 374 specifically excludes the sex education programs. So that I'm not
there are sex ed questions of
relevant.
Sorry.
So, but that it's worth more discussion than we have time for today, especially when an amendment wasn't really advertised. Let me hear from Member Davis, please.
I just want to be really clear, because I don't want to bring this back to the agenda if we don't have to, but I'm willing to if we do have to. But I think sensitive material is already sort of outlined here in the code. But what I don't understand is the second concern about answering the spontaneous questions. Is anything about that written in code? Or are we following what's already in code, or did we write that language in board rule only?
I'll let Deputy Stallings speak to that.
And Jody may know the answer off the top of her head. If you do, Jody, I will need to take a look really quickly to see if the spontaneous question is in code. I believe it is. And
well, because if it is, I don't know that. Member Klein, would you still want to bring it back if it's already in code, or would that suffice if that language is in code, so we don't necessarily have options there?
I would like to see where it is in code, and if it is a problem in code, then that I would recommend that we add that to our statute, a list of statutes to try and get amended.
You just scroll
so that we can fix that problem.
Yeah, can we scroll back up to where it says
scrolling? We caught the phrase. Scroll back up.
Yeah, the one about spontaneous questions there, though, was talking about the instruction on contraception. So I was wondering if there was something more broad. Oh, wait, here we go. You're right. It's right there. So the state at no time is this what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I saw. At no time may instruction be provided raised by students regarding any means or methods that facilitate or encourage the violation of any state or federal criminal law.
It's also in the line above.
And right here it says, oh, sorry, Chair Lear, can you see the one I'm highlighting right now?
Yes, you can. You want to speak to that, Angie?
Yeah, I was just going to state it states that that subsection 2EI does not preclude an instructor from responding to a spontaneous question as long as the response is consistent with the provisions of this section, which I would the way I would interpret that, it would mean that as long as an educator is following the law that's here in code and in our board rule, they may respond to spontaneous questions.
Right, and the fact that it says a violation of any state or federal criminal law by a minor or an adult. So I think that covers, as far as I'm concerned, that covers the field of HB 374, the statute that enacts that. It covers any federal laws, covers constitutional laws. So Cindy, do you want to speak more to that? Or I'm sorry, Jody, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, please. Jody Parker, Health Education Specialist for the Utah State Board of Education. Just one kind of clarification on that. The provision that we have for spontaneous questions, it is really narrow scope in that it's providing accurate data, correcting inaccurate, misleading information with regards to sex education. So it really is within the scope of the instruction here. We also have a required law and policy course that all educators have to complete before teaching students. And that's required for every single health educator, and if the district employs someone else. For example, very often they might use a school nurse to give some of this instruction, and in that case, they would have to complete this. So everyone who gives instruction is aware of the limitations of what they can answer. And we have, and the board has reviewed, a teacher guide for answering questions. And we know that they have to be factual, unbiased, and medically accurate, and aligned with law and standards. And that's all been established really well. And again, it's part of that law and policy course that they have to complete. So I just wanted to add that little bit of clarification that that this is limited to one section of instruction, and that same section of instruction, there's a required law and policy training that accompanies that.
And it's specific to certain kinds of misstatements. Correct.
Yeah. So like an example would be if a student said something, well, I heard or I saw on YouTube, an instructor could say, oh, you know what, that's not true. And that's really what the purpose of this is to correct misinformation statements, or when the students have a question because they don't understand something. It is not to give instruction, though. Let me add that piece of clarification, if I may. That if a student says, hey, I heard, and they have something that they heard in the hallway or they saw on a social media post, a teacher can say, oh, you know what, that's not true. But they can't give further instruction. That would be beyond the scope of this. So if it was something maybe a little more salacious, the teachers can say that's not true, but then they can't go into more explanation. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
It is helpful, and I think there's that element of trust that we still have to have with our teachers.
Yeah, I just want to be really clear that there's a law and policy course that's required. It's required before you can ever teach, and it has to be renewed every 3 years. And that's part of that assurance form. And we have 100% return rate of those assurance forms. I keep them. And the LEAs have to acknowledge that all teachers are trained before they teach, and all veteran teachers have renewed within 3 years. And we keep all those records. I think that we have really great compliance on this piece and really great understanding.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jody. And Member Klein's hand is down, and we can just remind the committee members or anyone else that a board member with 2 other board members can ask to have something put on the agenda. So I think we can just leave it at that at this point. And I would accept a motion to continue this rule.
Can I just ask a question?
Member Davis, yes.
So did Member Klein then withdraw the potential amendments, or does she want the motion to say to be brought back, or continue now but be brought back, or was that understanding of the limitations?
Maybe I read that into her taking her hand down.
Yeah, I'm fine moving forward and bringing possible amendments forward at
a later point.
Date.
Okay, thank you very much, Natalie. Thanks for asking that, Cindy. So I'm entertaining a motion for the continuation. Go ahead, Member Davis.
I move that the committee continue R277-474 on first reading and forward to the board for continuation on second and final reading.
The motion is that the committee continue R277-474 draft 1 excuse me, on first reading and forward to the board for continuation on second and final reading. Any further discussion to that motion? I'm not seeing any raised hands. So members, please vote. And I am seeing 5 aye votes. So thank you very much, committee members. Thanks so much. Jody, thank you for your preparation. Thank you, Angie. We're moving on to item 2.4, another action item, R277-324. Having to do with paraeducators, paraprofessionals, and we have Ben Rasmussen and Dr. Leah Voorhees. So whichever one of you wants to begin.
Thank you, Chair. Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. We are bringing this rule to you today with some changes based on updates in federal law that necessitate a little reworking of this rule, specifically Section 5 in this rule. So the bulk of the substantive changes you'll see start on lines 96. You'll see there's a big chunk of language that staff is recommending that we strike from the rule. This was originally mandated by No Child Left Behind. It's for educators or paraprofessionals that were hired before 2002. This is essentially obsolete now, so we just don't need that language, as the paraprofessionals in question should all now be in compliance with the federal requirements. Then there's been some updates through ESSA, which shifts some responsibility away from the local level and to the state as far as ensuring the qualifications of paraprofessionals. And so you'll see that on lines 117 through 125, there's some updates to the approved assessments and what would be required to obtain the highly qualified status, I believe, for paraprofessionals. So those are on there. You'll see there's reference to a board approved assessment. The next agenda item would be a chance for the committee to see those assessments and approve what's being proposed there. So this kind of plays into conjunction with the next agenda item as well. And so with that, I think Dr. Voorhees would be able to answer questions you may have about these changes.
Anything you would like to add right now, Leah, or would you want to just be available for questions?
Yeah, let me add one piece, which actually came up as a result of a question that you, Chair Lear, asked me about this proposal recently. So the impetus for these changes, and these changes relate, like Director Rasmussen stated, relate to paraprofessionals being highly qualified when they are paid for with Title I dollars. So this only applies to paraprofessionals that are in Title I programs paid for with Title I dollars. And the impetus for this change was actually the next agenda item. ETS, the testing company, had made some changes to how they were going to be administering the test that most of the paraprofessionals who are paid with Title I dollars and eligible for that in our state, it would really have affected our LEAs. And so Val Murdoch, who is the Title I monitoring specialist, when she got the word from ETS, she brought this to our attention, the fact that the board would need to approve another option for paraprofessionals to be eligible to be paid for with Title I dollars if ETS's testing process became too onerous. And so when we looked at bringing the next agenda item to you to approve another option for paraprofessionals, we recognized that this language in 324 that Director Rasmussen just showed you between lines 96 and 109 was no longer necessary. It's actually redundant. You can see on line 96, it says paraprofessionals hired before 2002, and then on 110, it's hired after, and now all of them are included in the after. And so that language that's been stricken is no longer needed. And then what she also recognized is that it is your responsibility now under ESSA to approve those assessments. You have more responsibility than you did previously, and that's the update that Director Rasmussen was outlining that relates to lines 117 through 124. So this is actually now your responsibility under ESSA, not a local responsibility. So that's why we're proposing these changes. And Val, I wish she could be here to be able to introduce herself to you, because she is one of our rock stars in this agency, but she's actually at the Title I monitoring meeting today nationally. So I am her representative, but that's the impetus for bringing these two items to you this morning.
Thank you. Very helpful. I have two questions or two people asking them. Member Hymas.
Can I move to Member Davis? I need to regather.
Yes, Member Davis.
I was just going to make the motion because this is only for those who are paid with Title I funds, and we have very little wiggle room in that space. So
Right.
I can wait till you're done, Board Member Hennis.
Yeah, please, if you're ready, Chair.
Matt, go ahead.
I was curious if it says satisfy a rigorous board approved assessment. Is this from a company? Are we saying LEAs, you create an assessment and submit it to the board and we'll approve it? Maybe you touched on that and I was distracted. Can you help me understand that one a little bit?
Leah?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, Board Member Hymas, I didn't touch on that. It would actually come up in the next agenda item, but that's great to do it here because then you'll be prepared for the next agenda item. So that language is from the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Every Student Succeeds Act. So the assessment is one of the three ways that a paraprofessional can become highly qualified and then thus be paid for with Title I dollars. So if you move up a little in the rule to line 113, you can have basically an associate's degree. Okay, that makes one qualified. You can have 48 semester hours if you didn't actually get a degree, or the test. And the test needs to demonstrate, and this is lines 120 and 122, knowledge of instruction in reading, writing, mathematics. So to your question about the rigor and the process of assessment. So the EESSA allows a state education agency to create a test, to purchase, to go through the process to see if a test satisfies the requirements in ESSA and approve it, to contract with someone to create a test, or to your point, yes, to an LEA. An LEA could submit a test to you, and then we could go through the process as your staff to determine if it meets the requirements, and then you could approve it. So there are several different ways that a test could get to you for approval. And one of them definitely could be that the LEA could submit a test. The Title I directors, Val had extensive conversation with the Title I directors across the state about this particular issue. As soon as ETS sent us the notification that they would be changing the process. It would become more expensive, considerably more expensive, almost twice, and that LEAs could no longer administer their test, that paraprofessionals would have to go to one of the 3 testing sites we have in Utah, which makes it really complicated for rural paraprofessionals, or take a home test, which is then even more expensive, and you have to have the required equipment to take the test. LEA Title I directors had extensive conversations about their preferences, and they do not feel like they have the capacity to create their own tests, to develop their own tests. So it was actually LEA Title I directors that asked us to go look for other alternatives. And in the next agenda item, we will present an alternative that we did find as a result of that search for your approval. Does that answer your question, Board Member Hymas?
And some, thank you. I just want to make, I understand that it's going to be a very small percentage, if any, that say, oh yeah, I want to take this on. I just want to make sure the opportunity is available. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that very helpful answer. Member Booth also has a question. You're muted, Randy.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a comment that of all of the many things that the board is responsible for and that we don't know that we're responsible for, I am so grateful for Leah Voorhees and the staff members who in a remarkable way continue to have our backs and make sure that we do what we need to be doing as all of these issues change and responsibilities are placed upon us that we weren't aware of. I feel completely confident when we got that explanation just now. I just thought, oh my gosh, this is really wonderful to have such a competent staff keeping track of what we're supposed to be doing, because we would be lost without you. Thank you.
And with an eye toward flexibility for LEAs. Member Davis, I think we're ready for that motion.
I move that the committee approves R277-324 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
The motion is that the committee approves R277-324 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any further comments or discussion to that motion? I'm not seeing any. Would committee members please vote? Okay, thank you. I see that. I don't see if Natalie voted. Do you see that, Angie?
Natalie voted, Board Member Klein voted no.
Okay, that would be 1 no vote and 4 yay votes to continue or pass this amended item. Let me also just add that there probably, and I probably misspoke earlier, especially given the length of our agenda, there won't be an opportunity, unfortunately, while we're in this Zoom world, to have further comments on these items. So I would invite those who are in the waiting room or in the actual Zoom meeting to then become a viewer as opposed to an active participant. That's our usual practice. So I wish I'd been more accurate to begin with. And we won't have time for additional interaction, but we'll always receive written comment. So I am now moving to item 2.5. This is the companion piece to the previous item, the additional assessments to determine the highly qualified status of paraprofessionals working in Title I schools. Ben, or I'm assuming Leah, would you speak to this?
Yes, I'll take this one. Thank you, Chair. So like I said previously, so it's your responsibility to approve tests as one of the 3 options for a paraprofessional to be eligible to be paid with Title I dollars, to be highly qualified under ESSA. So the most common way that paraprofessionals have become eligible in Utah for the past few years is taking the ETS ParaPro assessment. And like I said, they are changing the way that they are administering that assessment. So paraprofessionals used to be able to go to the LEA office and take that test. And we were, all states that use the ETS ParaPro assessment were told just a couple months ago, like very little notice, that they, as of June or July 1, they would be changing that to paraprofessionals having to go to a testing site. We only have 3 in Utah, or they could take it at home, but it would be more expensive and they'd have to meet certain technology requirements. So of course, this was a huge, this would be a huge shift for our LEAs and was concerning. So Val did a nationwide search to find what other states were doing and found that on the chart that you could see there, that there are other options, and this Project Para option down at the bottom of the list is a really exciting option that the University of Nebraska Lincoln campus and the Nebraska Department of Education have collaboratively created and are willing to allow Utah to access for free. Pretty freaking amazing. Yes, they are willing to let our paraeducators access that test. And then she also found that many states are using Paraeducator by Master Teacher, and you can see what the cost of that process is. So so she started working on, let's find some additional options for LEAs immediately. As she was working on that, and as all other states who relied heavily on the ParaPro assessment by ETS started working on that, we all gave feedback to ETS that we did not have enough notification of this change and that this change would cause a burden. It would put a burden on LEAs and paraprofessionals. So ETS has actually backed up that change and will not be making that change until likely the beginning of the year. So we're not in the state that we were 2 months ago when we proposed this agenda item, but we're actually better off because of it, because we worked with Nebraska to provide this option, and then we also have found the option of the master teacher. So the agenda item that we are bringing to you today is for you to approve adding the Paraeducator by Master Teacher assessment as an approved assessment, and the Project Para by the University of Nebraska at Lincoln and the Nebraska Department of Education to your list of approved tests to make a paraeducator highly qualified under ESSA so they can be paid with Title I dollars. In addition to the other 2 ways that they can, if they have an associate's degree or the 48 hours and the required knowledge. So that's the agenda item, is to add these 2 tests to your approved list. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see a question by Member Klein, who's back. Thank you. Go ahead, Natalie.
Yes, so I have a friend that is a teacher that lived in Nebraska before, and she says everything in Nebraska is bad. Is there something that we can we're being asked to approve these tests? I have not seen them. I don't know what's on them. Are we just supposed to take someone's word for it?
Go ahead, Leah.
Thank you, Member Klein. So the process that was used to vet these tests is the exact same process that has been used to vet the ParaPro assessment when ESSA passed originally 2017. It passed in 2016, but we vetted tests in 2017. And very similar to the process that we use for all materials vetting, a group of stakeholders gets together and vets the test against the rubric, which has been created against the rule and the the actual regulation and ESSA itself. So that isn't generally something that comes to the board. A committee vets those resources, but they have been vetted, which is why we're bringing them to you as proposed options.
Can we see the results of that vetting? I just don't want, I don't feel comfortable voting on to approve something where I haven't seen any evidence to show that, other than taking somebody's word for it.
So when you say, just to clarify, so your review of those materials, Leah, isn't necessarily a written evaluation, is it? Is it just a
rubric?
I don't want to call it or it may not even be a rubric. It may be just a visual review of the materials. But tell us what kind of a review it is, because I don't want to impose more work on you if there isn't a written document already, but that you with or someone else in your staff with your expertise has then reviewed it and said, yes, I think it's fine. So we may not have a document, but I'll let Leah speak to that. Go ahead.
Yes, so Val Murdoch and the team that reviewed could definitely provide you with written documentation of the review. I personally did not participate on that review team, but Val led that process and can provide you with that documentation, of course.
Can we ask, or can I ask that this be brought back next month after we've had a chance to look over that information, if you can have it sent to us?
How time sensitive is this, Leah?
This was very time sensitive when we put it on the agenda, but because ETS has backed off of their new process, and we have until the end of the calendar year to use ETS, we have a couple months.
Okay, we'll take that into consideration. Member Davis, something to add?
Did you mention this already? Where is the criteria for the assessments outlined? Is it in code or rule or federal law, or like what are, I know we're looking for science of reading and best practices and probably peer reviewed practices, but is it specified anywhere, or is it up to our discretion of our agency?
Chair, would you like me to respond?
Yes, please.
So it is outlined in ESSA, so in regulation. It is also outlined in your rule. And it may seem vague, but the criteria is knowledge of and the ability to assist in instructing reading, writing, and mathematics. Okay, so there's two. And then knowledge of and the ability to assist in instruction of reading readiness, writing readiness, and mathematics readiness. So there are basically 4 criteria in 3 content areas. So the review is kind of a rubric: 4 criteria, 3 content areas. Does that answer the question, Vice Chair?
Yeah, kind of. May I follow up, Chair?
Yes, please.
So essentially, when we get down to the kind of nitty gritty of what we are looking for, that's up to us, because
Correct.
there are just these kind of general umbrellas outlined everywhere else.
Correct.
And so maybe it would be helpful just to hear like what we're looking at, or even have an email of what we're looking at, basically, but not right now, because we're in a time sensitive meeting. But I would suggest that we move this forward so LEAs can start having the opportunity to look at some options. But I would also suggest that we are sent the information that board member Klein is asking for. And if, something is found that's nefarious with Nebraska, that, we can bring that back. That can be requested with 3 board members to be brought back to committee to discuss. And just to clarify, can we, like with these other tests, are these folks open to making any kind of a change if we find something that we really hate, this one question or something, or are they not?
We're a little gun shy. Leah, can you respond to that, or do you know the answer?
I can definitely try. So our relationship with ETS, they're not a company that is generally open to making changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that go ahead.
Let's see, the Paraeducator by Master Teacher, because it's also a nationwide administered exam, likely not. The Project Para, which was developed by the University of Nebraska and the Nebraska Department of Education, I don't know that there's a cost benefit for them to make changes based on our need, because they have created it for their state. And they are, out of the goodness of their hearts, allowing us to access it. I think if there were specific criteria that we wanted to include, it would make more sense for us to either create our own, to develop our own test, or to put out an RFP to have someone develop one for us, than to have any of these three to go through the process, which would probably not be fruitful, to have any of these three make significant or possibly even minor changes.
Thank you. Cindy, anything further?
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, so if we move these forward and then we receive information, if there's one that we want to take off the list, that then 3 people can bring that forward and put it on an agenda, and we can request that it be taken off the list. But we're not looking at making requests for individual items to be adjusted. We either are going to keep them all, remove them all, keep a couple, or make our own. And I'll make a motion.
And is that true? Was that an accurate statement, Leah? I thought so from what you said.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are probably the appropriate choices.
And what we learned about curriculum yesterday, I think that providers, vendors are even more protective of their assessments for obvious reasons. I'm ready for a motion, Member Davis.
Okay. Well, I'm frustrated about that, because I think we aren't paying money, but those people who do pay money to use certain products should be able to have some say in what they are. But that's going to derail this whole thing. So
and I was going to say that's a fair contract question, but that maybe should go to our procurement officer as opposed to.
Yeah, I do get that. Thank you. I move that the committee approves the recommended assessments and respective cut scores to use to determine the highly qualified status of paraprofessionals working in Title I schools forward to the full board for final approval.
Thank you. The motion is that the committee approves the recommended assessments and respective cut scores for LEAs to use to determine the highly qualified status of paraprofessionals working in Title I schools, and it forwards these assessments to the board for final approval. Any further discussion to this motion? I think we have some common understandings about.
I'll speak to the motion. I mean, I just feel like this is giving an option that is not going to cost money, because the reality is the first assessment has been used for years without us ever having seen it. And I've never heard anybody come forward saying that there's something nefarious about the science of reading and science of math test that we're currently using. So I think we should move forward with a more cost-effective option, but I'm certainly open if somebody finds something, or board member Klein does, or someone else does, that we come back and revisit. But I think for now, for people to start making plans and budgeting purposes, we should move forward with the more cost-effective options.
Thank you. Appreciate that explanation. So with no further comments, would committee members please vote? And let me see, I'm not seeing Matt, you moved, there you are, and member Booth. I'm not seeing Randy's vote. Can somebody help me? Oh, there he is. I see 4 ayes and 1 nay from member Klein. Thank you, Leah, for that information and expertise.
Thank you, Committee.
Sure, thank you. We're moving to item number 2.6, another action item, R277-522, entry years enhancements. Another, just a continuation. So again, we don't need to belabor this. It's just we're being asked to continue the rule while they're working on issues. So
sorry, but I have to drop off. So everybody have a wonderful day. I've got to go.
You too, especially. Have a wonderful wedding. See you.
Thank
Natalie.
you.
Bye, Natalie.
So EYE, that would be Malia or Ben, whichever.
I'll start us off. Essentially, this is a 5-year review. I would just highlight that this program is slated by its own language to sunset on June 30th, 2023. So that's the end of this school year, and then we would bring a repeal for this rule after that. But this is just kind of in the phase out stage for this program.
Thank you. Does anyone need any more discussion to that? I don't see any, so a motion would be in order. I'll make that motion that the committee continues R277-522 draft 1 on first reading forward to the board for continuation on second and final reading. Any further discussion to that motion? I see none. Would board members please vote, or committee members who are also board members? And I see
4 votes in favor.
Unanimous.
Thank you. I have to change screens now. 4 votes in favor, so that motion passes. Moving to the next item, that would be item 2.7, which is R277-728. This is a discussion of a new rule proposed about honors courses. Again, are you going to take this on first, Mr. Rasmussen, and then go to Jennifer? Or
yeah, I'll cue it up real quick. So if I may, Chair, R277-728 is a new rule. It's a rule that is Director Thronson will explain staff is recommending based on some requests they received from the field. This would establish requirements for how honors courses are taught, and Director Thronson can give you some of the background on how this came to be recommended.
Chair, may I begin?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Jennifer Thronson, Director of Teaching and Learning. This has been a long process in the making. It's been over, I think, 18 months since we started working towards this rule. So I want to take you through the journey, understand where it came from and how we got to this point, as this is an unusual request to have a rule that doesn't have a policy asking us to have a rule. It is the community that has asked us to have a rule. So I've asked for screen sharing rights. I will need those. I have a presentation to give if someone can authorize. Thank you. All right. So it's going to just start with a little timeline, how this came about to try and there's been some misinformation and I think some misunderstandings around this request that hopefully the presentation will clarify so that you can make the decision you want to make. So within this, we started in spring of 2021. There was some expressed concerns from our content director. So we meet with math and science and ELA and all of those folks frequently in our jobs. And so they expressed some concerns over honors. And so we wanted to see how broad this issue was. So we actually went out to all the content areas that have honors courses and conducted a survey to see, like, where are they? Is this really an issue? Was it just in this content area? And the findings came back that it was a pretty significant issue, that people were seeing the implementation of honors not really holding up to a standard of rigor and challenge that's expected in honors. So in some communities, schools were seeing that honors was just the same course being taught to a different group of kids, but called honors. In some courses, it's just you get to read more books than kids that aren't in honors. And so really looking at the rigor and challenge associated with the title of honors. So within that survey data, and I'm actually going to swap screens for just a minute to show you a different the infographic that's in your backup. Here. You don't need that part, you need this part. And there we go. At the top, the survey results, one of the questions we asked was, what kind of change would you like to see if you think a change is warranted? So 13.6% recommended no change, that in their communities that this was fine. 58.3% asked for regulation. When we described what we meant by that, we explained that that would be some type of rule that would kind of dictate some guardrails around honors. So you have about 60% of the community that said yes, please. Then we had 28% say, just get rid of honors. It is not what it should be, and it'd just be easier to get rid of it. We did not feel comfortable as staff moving in that direction, given that was 30%, and knowing our families, I think a lot of parents appreciate the opportunity for their kid to have that honors experience. And so in working with the directors of the content areas, we went about some additional work to be able to meet their needs around regulating the program. We wanted to really dig into what the research said around like what does make a quality program versus making it up ourselves, right? Like what should go into a regulation related to honors. And so as we moved forward with that, staff spent probably about 6 months doing the research around what are the best practices when it comes to honors, and took that data and looked at our state level data as well. So the LEA said they expressed this was a problem. What does our state data show? And between those two resources, we then took the information of best practice as well as the state level data back to the directors. So we met with curriculum directors, math, social studies, science, world languages, English, gifted and talented, might be one more, and just said, here's what we're thinking. Here are the things that we know make a quality honors course. Here are the things that we know don't, as well as the equity of access to these courses. And then they kind of gave us the go ahead, and we decided, the last step would really be taking it to our superintendents, as they are the policy leads in their communities, to say, what do you think? Are you supportive? Is this necessary? Those kinds of conversations. So we met with them in June at their retreat, went over the rule in depth. They asked for a one-word language change, and we're supportive of the rule as you see it today. So wanted to take you into the same data that we shared with the community, as I think it gives a fuller picture of the why behind this work. So at the kind of just seeing like how prominent is honors in Utah, this map is really meant to show where honors is available. So if there's the white means basically they don't have honors courses or very few students participate, up to the orange, which is basically up to half of their population is in honors. So for example, my daughter goes to East High in Salt Lake. Every kid takes an honors course as a freshman. And so that particular school would have 100% participation, where in another school that would not be. So you can imagine if everyone's in honors, what makes it honors? So there's some kind of complications, but wanted to show you the variability across the state of the consistency or lack of consistency in this case of who is engaging in honors and participation. And then as we kind of said, okay, that's interesting information around who has honors and what the prevalence of honors is. One example is Canyons. Canyons has an opt-in policy. Any kid can participate in honors who chooses to, and they have about 24 to 33%, somewhere in that range, participating in honors through a anybody can that wants to policy. So down below is the demographic and kind of access to future pathways. So on the left, you have our kind of demographic groups that we often look at to see if there is any potential access issue. And so the participation rate is the number participating. The state gap is the gap between the number of students in that population and the percentage engaged. So those gaps are pretty wide, as you can see, double-digit numbers across almost, all of the groups in their access. So for example, a student with disability, they might have a disability in math, but they want to take honors English. What we're seeing in the system is that the system is not really affording, because of that designation, necessarily the opportunity for them to participate in honors. They have less access than their peers. And then on the right are the limitations to pathways. In a lot of our systems, if you were in honors in middle school, that sets you on a future pathway of being in early college coursework in high school, and actually can prevent you from being in those courses if you didn't join that pathway in middle school. So we've got 57% of students who were in college level math began in a pathway in middle school honors math. So, you know, if you didn't have that opportunity, you have a less likelihood of being able to get into that pathway later. So it is a pathway problem as well. And you can see the rest of those metrics on this graphic. Just wanted to kind of highlight, for example, that bottom one, 22% of the 7th and 8th graders who take an honors course, these are students that make up the majority taking advanced college coursework. So a fifth of the population then become the majority of the population taking those courses later in school. So to kind of advantage and really say, we want every kid to have the opportunity, whether they choose that opportunity or not is totally up to the parents and that student. But right now, there are some current constraints to the system, such as prerequisites, GPAs, course taking patterns that then affect students' opportunities to choose to elect into those types of courses. So with that said, I'll stop sharing my screen and answer questions that you might have. The rule basically has 2 points. One is what an honors class should be, what it should not include, as well as the access portions that allow any student who would like to participate the opportunity to do so. They still have to, you know, step up to the plate and do the work, but the opportunity is afforded if they would like it. So with that said, happy to answer questions as the chair accepts.
Okay, thank you very much for that very helpful graphic explanation in a good way. Member Davis.
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned that the superintendents had asked for one language change. Did you tell us what it was?
I did not.
Okay.
May I respond, Chair?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. So on line 27, it used to say included or includes compacted or above grade level content. They wanted to change it to emphasize so they could see opportunities where the point of honors is not to compact. It's that compacting is when you try and do like 2 courses in one. For those of you that like that term is unknown, but that they might do some compacting or some above grade level content. But typically when you do that, we call it something else. So we call it compacted or we call it extended, where we're actually adding standards. In honors, the intent is to go deeper and to really dig into a topic rather than doing more topics more broadly.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Can I follow up?
Yeah.
So this one I'm struggling with, and lots of people that are contacting us are struggling with also, because I think there's a worry that that it looks like this is saying you can only teach the grade level standards, whereas there's an understanding that we've got to teach the grade level standards, but then there certainly in a setting like this would be an opportunity to sometimes move beyond those or move above those after a thorough and deep learning of the current grade level standards. And I don't mean just standards. I mean, like, there may be some text that actually is on a higher reading grade level than the current honors course, but yet it's in the honors course. And so I'm really grappling with this line, but I'd like to listen to the rest of the discussion to see how it rolls out.
May I respond a little to that, if that's okay?
Yes, if you could be kind of brief.
Sure. So the difference is honors versus a compacted course versus above grade level. So this doesn't mean you can't read more challenging text by any means. It just means I'm not going to teach 8th grade standards as the majority in my 7th grade ELA class. I'm going to focus on 7th grade ELA and go deeper and more challenging, which might include rigor. Compacted, for example, that would be a different course. So if they want to say, I want to teach ELA 7 and 8 together in a year, they could do that, but that's not considered an honors course. That is actually a compacted course. And I think that's where people are getting confused between compacting, where you're combining multiple sets of standards into 1 year or less, secondary 2 and 3. Sometimes they'll put that together in a year where kids go through both. That's a compacted course, not an honors course. So there's some distinction that I think people don't really realize in courses. Honors is when we're saying we're going to go deeper into the grade level content, primarily, which is what this rule is saying, without trying to bring in a whole nother year's worth of content, which would be a compacted course.
Sure. Quick follow-up, Chair.
Sure.
I mean, I totally agree with all of that. The responsibility is to teach that course. But I wonder if there's a way to write that a bit differently in this rule, those two things, so that the public has clarity, because currently they don't.
Are you?
I might be making some kind of suggestion. Let me think about it.
Okay. All right. We'll go to Member Hymas then while you're thinking. Matt?
Thank you. I have some concerns as well. I've put a draft 2, or I've asked for help. I don't know how to do it. We got better people than me. But there's been a draft 2 to kind of get some discussion going, and some of my thoughts on here. I've got some feedback from Dr. Thronson that, well, that the draft 1 was what LEAs wanted, and I'm still struggling to get there, admittedly. I think the draft 1, it makes honors courses and non-honors courses synonymous. I don't understand why. So I would love to remove an honors course may not, right? Why can't an honors course primarily follow rote memorization of rules and procedures? Why can't they? Why can't they emphasize teacher lecture, right? Or teach above grade level content? That's my question. I don't know of any LEA, as I've been looking at this, who said, yeah, we want shackles. We want you to tell us what we can not do. So I really struggle with these cannots here. Additionally, up a few lines more, I just changed the word shall to may, giving flexibility to LEAs. And then there's one more, if you'll scroll to line 32, Ben, just hearing back from some LEAs, it says a school may not prohibit or discourage enrollment in an honors course. I'd love to remove the word discourage, not saying that we want to discourage, but I think a realistic conversation needs to happen. I do not want to set students up for failure if they're saying, well, my friends are in this honors course, I'll take it too. They need to have a realistic conversation with counselors that say, okay, this is what's expected in this class. I agree that it shall be open. I love that, and we'll keep that on there. I agree that LEAs may not prohibit, but discourage encompasses and takes away that realistic conversation and could set up students for failure. And I'm not for that. And then finally, lines 37 and 38. If I'm speaking frankly, I know that this is in the wake of equity, right? I do not believe that our LEAs need to be told this over and over and over again. They are very aware of their student population and what the course needs are. And so I don't agree with, we kind of slide this kind of stuff in. We've been doing it recently, and I'm not a big fan of it. So I'd recommend that be removed. So this would be a substitute motion to adopt draft 2. And then as amended, Ben, if we could remove discourage, I don't know how that would, I mean, I know you probably can't do it right this very second, but I'd love some feedback and thoughts on that.
And Jennifer, I'm sure you've got a few responses, but let us kind of process that for a minute, if that's okay. And then I will come back to you, because I know I don't want to minimize your work or your rationale about this. I just wanted to sort of give a couple of thoughts that I had after thinking about your proposed draft a little bit more, Matt. And I've said them to you privately. I'm sort of ambivalent about what to do about this also. I'm in favor of LEA independence and autonomy and local control. But I'm also believe the data that Jennifer has given us about the majority of LEAs wanting honors courses to have a more consistent meaning so that increasingly mobile families know what to expect from an honors course in Logan and an honors course in St. George. And I think there's merit to that. That's my first concern, my first point. And my second point is, well, my first point is the majority of LEAs, if we believe this information, support these changes. Secondly, that I think some consistency is meaningful. And thirdly, if we change to these mays and rather than shalls, which again, respecting local control, then all we have is advice. And that's not the purpose of a rule. So if we want to change it to only advice or training or information for LEAs, encouragement for LEAs, then I think we don't use this rule and we instead encourage staff to use the what they've learned from the survey of LEAs to work further with the advanced placement professionals. So that would be my thing. I wouldn't vote for this, Matt, not because I don't agree with you, but because it's not a rule anymore. And I don't want to minimize or dilute the importance of rules with advice.
Can I follow up?
So you need to follow up, and then I want to go to Member Davis, and then I want to come back to Jennifer.
Sure. Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. I agree with you 100%. And by now, I think the committee knows I would love not to add another rule. That's me. I love repealing rules. So if we did offer guidance, I would love to see that. Again, I don't know of too many LEAs saying, give us more rules. Yeah, they want guidance. We talk about the majority of LEAs here. I know it's been mentioned not only by you, Chair, but by staff as well. I must be talking to a lot of the minority because I'm not hearing it. And so just your information, this is the feedback that we're receiving as well. And I'd be happy not to have an extra rule, but to offer guidance to LEAs who are seeking guidance or clarification on what an honors class course looks like. Thank you.
Thanks. Member Davis.
I'd like to make an amendment on the first draft. I have a few amendments on the first draft.
Okay. I'm just wrestling with whether we should hear from Jennifer. Do you want to make those amendments before we hear from Jennifer, or would you
I'd like to make them, and then everybody can weigh in on what I didn't get a chance to like really thoroughly study that substitute motion, but it felt more sweeping than I thought that I was ready for, considering that I did contact the superintendent representative, Lexi Cunningham, and she said the superintendents of districts statewide do support this rule and are seeking greater consistency. So presumably, since they support this rule. So I'm trying to figure out how we can support the need in the field, and then also listen to what constituents are saying too, and make some adjustments so that we can hopefully find some common ground.
Thank you. Let's go ahead with that. But let me also say, Member Booth has the next comment. And Jennifer, I'm not going to forget that you will have some important responses to Member Hymas, but I feel like I need to let the committee members speak. I want to let the committee members speak first. Cindy, propose your amendments.
Okay, in line 24 would read, utilize only direct instruction. Line 25 and 26 would say, emphasize rote memorization of rules and procedures or basic recall of facts.
Okay.
And then while we're having the conversation, we have to rework line 27. We either have to remove it, and you don't need to write anything right now, but we need to think about this, because what it's communicating to people right now is that there's going to be no difference between a general ed course and an honors course. And that's not the message we're trying to communicate with this rule. And not even just trying to communicate, that's not what should happen. So I think
I don't have two screens. So can somebody show me line 27? Emphasize compacted or above grade level content.
So I'll work on something.
All right.
And I'd like to speak to the motions.
Please do. Go ahead.
I think that the one on line 24 just adds some clarity. It just says don't only do this. And that goes right along with lines 25 and 26, really is just that it shouldn't be, my kids have had really great honors courses where they really have rich discussion and in-depth learning and opportunities for a variety of assessments. And then they've had these experiences where all they do is get talked at and have to memorize 300 dates and do extra homework. And that's not really what it seems like an honors experience should be. And I have had parents, this is why I'm willing to leave in the line about the extra homework, because I've had parents say to me, I'm taking these advanced classes and it's no richer in thought. It's all the same stuff, but we're doing like 5 times the amount of homework. And that's ridiculous. And why do I want to have my kids participate in that? So anyway, I think that's where this line 24 and line 25 and 26 is going, that it's not just that kind of real rigid experience, that there's this kind of an opportunity to go deeper in discussion and debate and experience and a variety of types of assessments and such things like that.
Thank you, Davis. I'm sorry, Cindy, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you?
I'll come back to the 27 after I think about it, but
Yeah, think on that.
talk about these.
Member Booth and then Jennifer.
Okay, so I'm listening to this conversation and I certainly have always been for local control. But the fact that we have this rule before us today is a result of local control requesting greater insight and regulatory suggestions that will improve and strengthen the honors education programs across the state. And so I'm fully supportive of the process that Jennifer and her team went through over 18 months of assessing the problem, diving in, seeking feedback from leaders of learning. And though I definitely don't want to impose rules just because we like rules. I think this rule is absolutely necessary in order to ensure that the quality of honors courses across the state become more consistent and more regulated. And whether or not we've got exactly the right words here to do that, the fact that our leaders of learning have responded positively to the fact that, oh, thank you, finally we've got some regulation that will help us maintain the level across the state. So from Logan to St. George, we are having a more similar experience. I think that we need to applaud those efforts, and if we need to make some little tweaks, great, but I don't feel that that we need to reinvent the wheel that has been in the process of being reinvented for many months and many hours of meetings, and then we come and take it on in just a couple of hours and a few responses from parents who don't have the advantage of having seen this entire 18-month journey. I'm just feeling that we don't have to solve all the problems right now. There could be changes and amendments to this in future months But right now, here is a good beginning of regulation and instruction, that guidelines that will allow greater consistency and a more effective means of presenting and delivering honors courses across the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Booth. And I want to go to Jennifer Thronson. I have to throw in, though, a quote that I like and is often misquoted by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And it's often misquoted, and I just think that rings true here. Jennifer?
Yes, thanks for the opportunity to respond. So I think addressing both Board Member Hymas and Board Member Davis's comments around teacher lecture, I do want the board to know, when we did the research, we looked at effective practice in honors courses. Lecture has a negative effect size on student learning. So if we want to include utilize, don't utilize only, we're still allowing the majority of that class to be lecture, which for all kids is not good and has a negative impact on student learning. So I would encourage you as staff, and as the field has been the ones who have vetted and asked for this rule. As staff, we had no interest or desire. We know how hot honors courses is with our community, but because of the motivation of the field, we have brought this to you. And as Board Member Davis shared, USSA is supportive of this rule. So when we're saying, I don't know any LEA that wants this, we have 41 school districts who have aimed their support towards this rule. And as we move forward, best practice is what is being driven, this not list. Teacher lecture is not best practice for kids. Primarily focusing on rote memorization, not best practice for kids. Doesn't mean you can't use it. It's just what percentage of your time in teaching is spent there. Same with compacted and above grade level content. I think we're getting so burdened in the terminology that we're losing the essence. None of this restricts them from doing any of those things. It restricts them from using that as their primary delivery method. So instead of lecturing for the whole course, they have to provide opportunities for kids to collaborate, have discussion, and engage. They can do rote memorization. Some of the content might require that, but it is not the primary vehicle of instruction. And then I think the data shows where we've gotten by not having a rule. Our data shows that we're setting kids up for a pathway of not being able to achieve the same as their peers if they weren't lucky enough to be selected to be put into an honors course in middle school. So this is an issue that we've created by not having a system in place to give some greater direction. And honestly, the field is asking for it. And every time we want to listen to our local communities, that's what we did. And I think they would be really discouraged if the board said, we don't want to provide this direction, although you've clamored for it. So I'm going to leave it there and happy to continue the discussion.
Cindy, do you have language for line 27?
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
So I move that the board remove the language in line 27 and in the shall section add emphasize deep understanding of grade level content and above level content when needed. And I'd like to speak to the motion. I can repeat that also. That motion would be, I move that the board remove line 27 and add to the shall section, emphasize deep understanding of grade level content and above level content when needed.
Would you accept a friendly amendment to that, Member Davis, that said above level content if appropriate?
Yes, because in the other part of the rule, we're talking about personalization. And I don't think we should give an appearance that there's this kind of lowering of a bar. We want to maintain a high academic bar. And the reality is there are many instances where they are going to go deep in grade level content, but there may be some things that go above grade level content as is appropriate. That's good language. Thank you. and especially as we personalize.
Thank you for those proposed amendments. I think we are next going to vote on those.
I have two more.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Member Davis.
In looking at Member Hymas's suggestions. Oh, look, I know these two are going to be controversial, but I am okay taking out discourage because of what it says prior to discourage. It covers if you are giving students an open opportunity to enroll, then that inherently means you're not discouraging people from enrolling. And to his point, there might be someone who comes, like I've had students who come, haven't attended school for 5 years. You may want to realistically offer a certain starting point. Anyway, I just think it's inherent with what's listed above. So my motion would be, I move that the board remove the word discourage.
Discourage. And I've got to say, and let me just interject this. I would also support that because I think part of raising the bar for these courses is helping counselors do what they're supposed to do, and that is counsel students. And I wouldn't want to, I don't want to make them feel further uncomfortable or intimidated with what they're supposed to be working at. So go ahead, next amendment.
So the last one is, and we can debate this out. The last one would be to remove lines 37 and 38, not because an LEA shouldn't look at those trends across the board and say, you know, what are we lacking here? Why do we have 27% of our student body in this subgroup, but in our honors classes, we only have 4%. Well, so what's not jiving? I mean, that certainly is what LEA should be doing. But if they do what's asked in the above portion of the rule, then those things would follow. And that is to consistently, in a same manner, communicate to all students and families and people about the opportunities for honors courses, which I think is not necessarily happening right now. I think there is some limited exposure for people.
Thank you. And
I'm taking most all of Matt's, except I'm leaving in some of the parts like the homework part and some of the things I've heard from parents that are frustrating to them in their classes.
Thank you. And I'm going to take one more chair's prerogative and say, I would agree to that removal of lines 37 and 38, because I hear Matt's concern about the constant refrain. If we could also, as a board and a committee, stop inserting, including sensitive materials at every turn. Because clearly there are some people who believe that educators are not getting the message about sensitive materials. We know from data that educators are not getting the message about representative minorities and student groups because we have such an achievement gap and we have such a participation gap. So we've got a similar problem with two different proposals, and I would support non-foolish consistency in this case. Remember,
I have a quick follow-up.
Sure.
There's also a much bigger vision that we have to look at when we are saying that all students should be able to meet his or her potential. And we don't want to have boundaries and gatekeeping and all of this, but I think it's more of a training and a vision issue. And I've been to some training that our staff has done that's been fabulous, where we have worked with LEAs and said, what is actually happening in your upper level courses? What do all of your demographics look like? Why are there these big disparities? And answer those questions and help create a path forward so that all children have increased opportunities. what I don't want is an appearance that those lines at the bottom are saying, and this is what I'm hearing, the way they're understood by some members of the public, fill a quota for a quota's sake. That is not, I don't think, the intent of the rule or our staff or the superintendents. I think the intent is people, we need to take a real hard look at offering equal opportunity for all students who are willing to go in and do the work.
Thank you. And Matt has a comment. Let me ask Angie a question to be answered after Member Hymas, and that'll give her a minute to think about this. I'm still concerned that this rule looks more like advice than a rule. And I'd like a rule writer expert's opinion on that. So Angie, if you could look at this rule with Member Davis's changes and give me an opinion on that in a few minutes. Member Hymas.
Thank you. I agree with what Member Davis has put forth here. I like it. I can work with that. I appreciate the perspectives that have been given by staff and other committee members. If I could just ask a question of Dr. Thronson, just for an additional clarity for me and for the others who are listening in this meeting. Line 28, it says equate an honors distinction with an increased workload, such as requiring more assignments, that goes on to 29, or reading additional text without clear intent. I want to make it clear that an honors course can have an increased workload. Is that correct? It can require more assignments or reading, but it should have a clear intent to those readings. It's not, you're going to read this book because you're in an honors class. It's, this will give you additional depth into what our purpose of this class is.
Yes. So for example, in math, instead of giving the typical class 8 problems, they make the honors class do 20. Like that, honors kids don't need to do more practice. So just really being intentional, like they might read 6 books instead of 3 books, but there's purpose and there's discussion and there's assignments related to those. It's not quantity for the sake of quantity. So exactly right.
Okay, help me under, sorry, one more. Well, math, you're speaking my language. I was a math teacher. And I don't know what if you taught math as well. I don't know if that's
my doctorate's in math. So my master's and doctorate are math. So I know I was the literacy person for the state, but math is actually where I'm more educated.
So in my opinion, more math is always better. I don't know why we would.
When you have kids who already know it, they don't need to practice more, right? Practice makes permanent. And we also need to recognize some kids need more practice. Some students, especially your honors kids, practice 1 to 4 attempts is where you're really top kids. They need 1 to 4 exposures to master. Kids that are average 4 to 14. Kids who struggle 40 to 250 exposures. So you need more practice, honestly, in courses that aren't honors than courses that are honors when you're trying to master something new.
Thank you. That's really helpful information. And I clearly didn't have it from teachers in school because my math skills are awful. I'm math phobic, I would say. Angie, can you respond to my question? And then Cindy, I think we'll come back to you, or is that still up from before? Your hand. Okay, member or Deputy Stallings, do you mind responding to my question?
Yes, be happy to. So I was looking at the amendments and how Vice Chair Davis's amendments have impacted the rule. You still have an honors course shall with a number of criteria, and then an honors course may not with a number of criteria. So it won't be simply guidance with Vice Chair Davis's, or I guess in this case, Board Member Davis's amendments. I did compare the draft 1 with the amendments and draft 2, and I can see your point, Chair Lear, where Board Member Hymas's draft 2 with the change from shall to may and then eliminating all of the may nots. It is more of a purpose statement or guidance because it would not be legally binding. So, but the draft 1 with Board Member Davis's amendments does still have some shalls and may nots.
Thanks. I know it's kind of an opinion question, but I appreciate your expertise. Member Matt.
Yeah, thank you. Dr. Thronson, let's hash this out again, please. Just on, if we go back to the shalls, as you may remember, I was hoping to get a may in there, but if you have to keep a shall, we shall discuss it. Line 19, create multiple possible solution pathways. I'm a math teacher. I don't want to do that.
Meaning?
Do you know what I mean? Like, help me understand that. An honors course shall create multiple possible solution pathways. Again, if I'm in an honors math, what does that even look like? If I am in a more strict classroom, what does that look like when sometimes there's only one answer that we're looking for?
The answer, you're right. And a lot of math, it is like there is a right answer. How you get there is, there are many ways. And so this would encourage kids to think, like, you already know this pathway. Can you think about a different way to get there? And getting them to think outside their typical box. Honor students often they have the standard algorithm mastered or pick that up really quickly, but getting them to think more in a problem solving manner in the work life. We face problems every day and we don't necessarily have a standard algorithm to solve that problem. And so really encouraging students, this also in social studies, what could be the multiple solution pathway to solving this conflict in this community? In science, what could be multiple solution pathways to solving this crisis that's happening in our geography, such as like the Great Salt Lake and the issues that we're seeing there. So that's the intent of that, is really thinking and getting kids to think outside of maybe one pathway, but how else could this problem be solved in the work?
I see that follow-up, Chair.
Yes.
And this may just be something that I struggle with, but it might also be a deal breaker for me. I don't see how we can go into a teacher's classroom and tell them, in order to call this an honors course, you need to teach multiple ways of solving two-step equations. You know what I mean? Or even have time to sit down in some as little as 45-minute classrooms to go over some concept in math and then say, okay, take a minute and think about other ways in which you see my point here.
Sorry.
I struggle with that as a shall. I struggle with saying, if we're going to call it an honors course, I like the idea because there are many teachers out there who would probably do well in this and who have the time and resources, but there's also many teachers, myself included, I'm dipping into personal experience, who did not have that, but did create the rigor of an honors course.
Yeah, and I think for mathematics, this is already required by standards. So our standards require teachers to engage students in multiple solutions to problems. So for mathematics, if we were saying that it's not appropriate for math, it's already in our math standards. So that is a whole other open discussion. So I'm gonna leave that there.
As a friendly amendment, or did I cut you off, Matt?
No.
As a friendly consideration, what would both of you think about encourage students to find multiple possible solution pathways?
When appropriate.
If appropriate, when appropriate, yes.
If appropriate. It's not going to be on a two-step math problem.
No, but there would be if you're solving if you're writing an English paper or you're reading a book and trying to come up with the theme of it or something like that. Any response to that, Matt? Any response to that, Jennifer?
I would be fine with it. I think it still gets us at the opportunity, and all of these would be if appropriate. Like, you're not going to force multiple solutions when they're not appropriate. So if that helps to get us in a place that gets what the community is asking for, like, I'm supportive. The whole point is we want kids to be thinking in deep ways, and when we think in deep ways, we have to think outside that first synapse that's happening in our brain.
Matt, what do you think about that?
And I agreed. Again, this goes back to the original request of may instead of shall. Shall is just kind of, this is what you have to do. This kind of has to be in there. I don't want to put teachers in a spot where rewriting their curriculum in a week or next month because this came out. So yeah, any way that we can say, yeah, we strongly encourage this wherever possible, but you don't have to break the bank. So I don't know how that looks. If it would just be on that one line, if it would be an honors course shall, where appropriate, do these things. I don't know how that would be written up.
I think Jennifer's point is well taken. These are all to be read as appropriate, but I think I would feel better about encourage students to, on that line, encourage students to use, and I'm trying to think of the simplest word, or define multiple possible solution pathways. And if you think where appropriate is necessary, I can also agree to that. I like the encouragement. And I think we're just about ready to vote on this. Matt, did you have something further?
No, I'll remove my hand.
And I'm still wrestling with those last two lines. I was really more serious than not when I said the reason that a lot of board members want to including sensitive materials is because they feel very strongly about sensitive materials. I feel or against them. I feel very strongly about equity. And I feel similarly to Matt when he says teachers are tired of being told including sensitive materials. And again, not trying to pit one thing against another. But if I wouldn't feel like we needed to say this if our achievement gap was not profound, one of the worst in the nation, as I understand. So I'm concerned about doing away with those lines. And I don't know if that means I'll ask to divide the question, so at least I can vote against that, or if it means I would ask for maybe a different statement. I not opposed, but offering a different viewpoint than Member Hymas. I support equity principles. They make me very comfortable. So that's why I'm not comfortable in striking them. Member Davis, do you have some light and knowledge?
Well, I was actually going to talk about a different issue. If you wanted to stay on those two lines, I can come back to this.
I'm not suggesting that they be reinstated right now, but I will have a hard time voting against this unless we divide the motion. But Cindy, go ahead with your other issue.
I feel like we're trying to look towards amendments that meet a lot of the public input that we've been getting. There is sort of a mixed bag with open enrollment. And I just want to make clear for the public why I'm not asking to amend the open enrollment piece. And that is because all of our AP and concurrent enrollment courses right now statewide are open enrollment. All of them are open enrollment. And our data has proved that we are doing well. We're scoring in our AP scores in the top 5 in the nation. So the open enrollment has not created a scenario where the academic bar has had to be lowered. In fact, we've maintained a high bar and we're performing well. So if you look, it makes sense that there should be some consistency there. Where I'm uncomfortable is pushing into this space and saying, you have to do this, but I'm willing to do it because we've already done it for AP. It's already been done and it's going well and we should have some consistency, but I'm also willing to come back to the table. If people want to bring this back a year from now and say, gosh, we went to open enrollment and the wheels totally fell off the bus and our honors classes don't look like honors classes anymore and we've got to rethink this. I don't think that's going to happen. It never happened with our advanced placement courses. In fact, I've talked with teachers who have said we have maintained academic rigor because the people who are enrolling in these courses are people who want to be there and they're willing to put the hard work in. So I just want to go on public record explaining why that's the one piece I'm not asking for amendments on.
Okay, thank you for adding that. I'd like to move to divide the motion of all of Member Davis's motions that would then have all of them together except the very last one. And can vote on that separately. I wish I could, in the moment, think of a better way to write it, but it's hard to do while you're chairing a meeting. So I don't have a better way to say that is maybe not so sort of condescending, but because I hear Matt's point, but I also feel like we aren't there yet, and would also look for all of you to support me in other areas where we seem to repeat ourselves multiple times.
Can I just clarify something, Chair? This
Yes.
amendment you proposed to line 19, are we adding that into Board Davis's
19,
motion, or is that separate?
I thought it was a friendly amendment. Yes. Is that okay, Cindy?
Which one?
To add the amendment to line 19 to your motion?
That said encourage students to find possible solutions.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, so we'll add that one in also to the big group, if that's okay. So that the motion is then, my motion is to divide.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
We're talking about secondary courses, correct? Not elementary? Okay, thank you.
So my motion is to divide the motion, Member Davis's motion to make these changes and separate out the very last one, which is this to strike lines 37 and 38. Any further discussion to that motion? I won't repeat it because it was my own. And this is just the motion to divide. So would members vote on the motion to divide? And I see 3, and I'm assuming Randy's a yes also.
There's
Yeah.
4 yeses.
Okay, so we'll divide the motion. So let's take Cindy, or no, if I can again exercise the chair's prerogative, let me, I feel really strongly about this. So I'd like to take the single motion on lines 37 and 38 first. So the motion is to strike lines 37 and 38 in R277-728. And I won't repeat it again because it's my motion. So would members please vote yes if you want to strike, no if you don't want to strike?
I'm not ready.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I might make a substitute.
Oh, if you can do that, I would welcome it. Thank you. Member Davis, do you have an idea for a substitute?
Yes. I am. I just finished writing it.
Okay. And then we will be finished with this in time to do 2 more items. I know we will. 2 more minutes, and I think we should be finished.
Okay. I will read this slowly. A school shall study the makeup of honors courses and emphasize, I need a better word there, so someone help me, that students from all representative demographics have opportunity to reach their academic potential.
I propose, Cindy, and encourage students from all representative demographics.
That's better.
To reach their academic, I don't think we need that opportunity either. all representative demographics to,
Their academic potential.
yeah, I was going to think
To
of,
reach their academic potential.
I would accept that as a good substitute for the current lines that are there.
So you have to take out the word that.
Encourage students, right there, you mean?
Take out the word that.
Okay, Mr. Hymas, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the motion. I want to be respectful because I respect the members of this committee and the staff. But I think this is not necessary. I think that I don't want to go as far as to say it's a slap in the face to our school leaders. It kind of goes back to my original thought on striking the lines. Like this is not necessary. And I agree, Carol, Chair Leary, you mentioned we've been adding things, like consistent with, then we put a Utah law or sensitive materials. That's been the hot one lately. I love as short, as condensed as possible. We don't need to repeat ourselves. We don't need fluff in there. We don't need things that are obvious. We have LEAs who are professionals. They know what they're doing. They are in their specified area for a reason. They're good at what they do. They love their students. And to put this in, that says anything like a school shall aspire to have, or a school shall study the makeup. Yeah, of course. It's just, again, I struggle with it. So I respectfully speak against the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't think of a better respectful opposition. Thank you. Ma'am, I saw that Superintendent Dixon was on and had her hand raised. Superintendent Dixon, are you still there?
I did. I'm driving from home office to office in order to attend a viewing for a former employee. So I apologize for the disruption. I really hear what Member Hymas is saying, and I get this. It's easy to pepper rules with philosophical perspectives, I guess. So I hear and appreciate what he's saying. And for me, as I've been listening to the dialogue this morning, it's about providing opportunities. And maybe to Board Member Hymas's point, maybe that's not that far of a stretch, but I feel like sometimes what happens is our students get pigeonholed and assumptions made, and they don't always get opportunities presented to them. And I know this is personal to me because I'm one of those kids who wanted to take an AP and honors course in high school, and we didn't have many opportunities back in the day, but some did come forward and present themselves. AP English was introduced in our school, and there was some arbitrary test that I don't know that I took, or if I took it. I just know I really wanted to have the rigor of AP English, and I was not allowed in that class. And then in meeting with my counselor just about some opportunities, I had a counselor who actually discouraged me from opportunities. And I know that Board Member Lear hates it when I tell these stories of the 70s and discrimination against women, but it was true. And so I've always been pretty mindful about, it's not just about encouragement, but do we have opportunities? And I really see where open enrollment has helped, as Board Member Davis described. It really has made a difference and an impact on removing some barriers. So however you get that language straight so that it's clear, that it alerts schools that they do have an obligation to remove barriers and provide opportunities. And to Board Member Hymas's point, it should be a given, like we should just all be doing that. But to clearly state that somewhere, that the board's watching that and expecting that and looking for it, is that delicate dance that I hope we can accomplish. Thank you, Chair Lear, for letting me emote a bit on this.
Thank you, and thanks for, I was on the other side of that, where I feel like I benefited from teachers who, even, believe it or not, put me in an advanced opportunity, an earlier opportunity to study geometry. That gave me a lot of confidence though I'm not sure I was the best person at the time. So I had the opposite opportunities that maybe caused me to reach a little higher. So I'm hypersensitive maybe in that regard. So we have we have a new proposed line amendment to the amendment on lines 37 and 38, and then we'll vote on all of the other Davis amendments. So the motion on line.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Along the lines of what both Board Member Hymas is saying and Superintendent Dixon, encourage requires people to sort of go out and say, you should do this or that or the other based on my opinion, but maybe the different language needs to read, a school shall study the makeup of honors courses and provide opportunity to students from all representative demographics to reach their academic potential.
Would you like to change, since it's your motion, you can change it if you prefer that.
I think I will, because then the onus is there for the opportunity to match what's written above, which is all students and families should be communicated equally about this opportunity to take these advanced courses.
I think it's plural opportunities. And did you mean it to be plural?
I don't know, Board Member Hymas, does that get closer to what you're looking for, or do you feel that it doesn't?
Let me just bring a
Sorry,
little.
Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, Chair Leary, you're in control here.
I'm fine. Go ahead, Matt.
It kind of, if I'm honest with you, it gets a little farther away. A little perspective here. When we say a school shall study the makeup, is this an assignment to a school? Is this an additional thing? Now they're saying, okay, now we got to take a deeper dive in here. Honestly, I would prefer, if we're going to keep something in, I'd almost prefer what's written already. The school shall aspire to have the makeup of honors courses be representative of student demographics with similar levels of success across student groups. So I'm kind of going in the opposite direction, Cindy. Honestly, if I were, of course, I'd love to remove it. I've made myself clear on that. But if I had to choose between the original and the amendment, I think I would go with the original.
But is there a way to tweak the original so that you would feel comfortable keeping it in?
Well,
and it wouldn't seem like a quota thing, but more like a, hey, you really should be looking at your classes and making sure, there aren't these barriers that we aren't thinking about.
Yeah. What does it mean when it says, and Dr. Thronson maybe, or Chair Lear, if you know the answer, or other staff, what does it mean when it says with similar levels of success across student groups? What does that imply?
Chair, may I respond?
Please.
Yeah, the intent is to say, don't just get kids in it. So don't just the opportunity to participate is insufficient, but to make sure that they're also successful in the courses. So not just open the door, but also give them the supports necessary to be successful in those courses.
Thanks,
I prefer that language of giving supports to help them be successful, because you can't ensure anybody's success.
Mm-hmm.
And provide supports. Can we go back to that language up there, Angie?
Does that clarify, as we go back to that, Cindy, does that clarify my position a little bit?
Yeah, I'm just trying to find something that preferably that we can all agree on, that doesn't sound like a quota thing, but just sounds like a really authentic, let's not have barriers for kids to have opportunities for advanced coursework.
And so a little bit higher there, please, Angie. Go up a little further. The very end of the rule, 37 and 38. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I just wanted to look at in the rule lines 37 and 38 as written. A school shall aspire to have the makeup of honors courses be representative student and provide supports. Or where would you put that, Cindy?
What if we just take out all the last words?
All of the what?
Just end at 38. I mean, Member Hymas might have a better recommendation.
To keep it the way it's written.
Is there a way that
my recommendation? I'm going to vote to have it removed. I know what you're.
And I can't support it without it. So yeah. I'm okay with Cindy's amendment. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with providing levels. I don't read this to require a quota. I read it as an encouragement.
It's true, Chair Lear, but what's happening here, in my opinion, is not only are we putting more kids in, which is fine. This is great. I agree with that. But now we have to ensure that they learn, right?
Yeah,
And how do we tell an LEA, well, you have to ensure that they learn? Well, what we've seen in the past, history teaches us that all we do is we lower the expectation, right? And that's not what we want to do here.
And so maybe, so leaving the word aspire doesn't have that ensure word, which I also don't love.
Would it be, well, how about changing that to be aware? A school should be aware of the makeup of honors courses and how students in representative demographics.
And students' representation in those courses of student demographics.
And we're wordsmithing right on the
Yeah,
fly.
I know this is not going to work. I think we just need to vote this up or down. And Matt, I'll defer to you because you say you prefer the original to the amendment. You still feel that way?
Yes, honestly, here's what I would suggest. I think it goes in line with what you're suggesting, Chair, is that we make the votes on the amendments. It goes to board and we hash out a little bit more there.
We talk more about equity, and by then we'll add in sensitive materials in every honors course. All right.
So I'm going to stick with my amendment then, because I think it's just ask them to look at their groups and not control the outcome.
Okay, so the amendment, so the proposed single amendment is first on lines 37, 38. It would read as amended by Member Davis: a school shall study the makeup of the school's honors courses and provide opportunities to students from all representative demographics to reach their academic potential. All in favor, or no, I just did a Cindy thing. Would members please vote? And I see 1, 2, 3 to 1 is the vote, with Member Hymas being a no vote. And I'll just move without objection, because we already have talked about it, to say the second amendment would be all amended lines as proposed by Member Davis, and I'll read them quickly. That the committee amends R277-728 draft 1 as follows. Line 19, encourage students to find multiple possible solution pathways for appropriate. Amend line 24 to read utilize only direct instruction. Amend lines 25, 26 to read emphasize rote memorization. These are do nots, by the way, of rules and procedures or basic recall of facts. And then strike line 27. And then add to line, I'd add to R277-728-3-1. Emphasize deep understanding of grade level content and above level content, if appropriate, and amend line 32 to strike or discourage. Further, are we voting from last time, and including me, or any further comments to these proposed amendments as a whole? I see no comments. Would members please vote? I see 4 aye votes. Thank you very much for your discussion, your patience. Thank you, staff, for being helpful and providing expertise. And we will move, Member Booth.
I would like to amend line 37, 38 that we were just working on.
Okay, and you would suggest?
I would suggest a school shall remove barriers and provide opportunities to students from all representative demographics to reach their academic potential.
Can you start over on that again? A school shall remove barriers.
So we're not giving them an edict. You shall study the makeup of school honor courses. We're just saying a school shall remove barriers and provide opportunities to students from all representative demographics to reach their academic potential.
I'll withdraw mine.
Well, we already voted on it, but I'm all right.
Well, can we change it?
Well,
Can
I
you
think
reconsider?
Can we reconsider?
We haven't, I think we can because we haven't yet passed the rule. So I would say in the chair's prerogative, coming back to that is okay. A school should remove barriers and provide opportunities. My question would be whether Member Hymas thinks this is anything of an improvement.
I do
No.
like
You
it.
know,
I didn't let you speak to your motion, Randy. Do you have any more to say about that?
I was just sensitive to Matt's concern that we were issuing this edict to this is, you shall do this, do a study or however you go about it, but you've got to do this. I just think everybody knows, as he was saying, this is what everybody's trying to do as educators of Utah's youth. But we can say this doesn't feel like this is just a reminder. A school should remove barriers, provide opportunities to students from all represented demographics to reach their academic potential. Everybody's going to go, yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. That's what we'll do. Whereas the other one could make them feel like, here's another assignment, yet another assignment. They're already assuming that this is what we ought to be doing. And it doesn't hurt, as Superintendent Dixon said, to have the reminder in this document so that we're remembering that as we're dealing with all the other millions of details that we're trying to make sure we implement as part of the improvement of the honors program.
And I'd like to take this minute, I'd like to have this vote, but if it's not something that Member Hymas finds any more palatable, then I'm not going to take time. So Matt, what is your thinking about this?
I do like this. I appreciate Randy's thought into just saying what we're looking for. And I know we tried to get there, and there's obviously some more that probably should go into it, but I do like the idea of saying, yeah, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this so that people can, that all students have that opportunity, and that we want this as a state board. We want all students to have that. So anyway, I appreciate Randy's thoughtfulness on this.
I also support this, and thank you again, Member Booth. So now the motion is as a reconsideration without objection. The motion to the committee is that lines 37, 38 be amended from the previous amendment to say a school shall remove barriers and provide opportunities to students from all representative demographics to reach their academic potential. Please vote, members. And I see 4 yes votes. You made it, Cindy and Randy. That was a beautiful compromise. So thank you very much. We know we do have to move now the rule as amended. Would somebody like to make that motion?
So move.
The motion is that R277-728, let me get my cheat sheet, and that R277-728 draft 1 as be approved, that the committee approve R277-728 as amended, draft 1 as amended, on first reading, forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. That's the motion. All members vote, please. And I hope I got the draft ones and as amended right. Good. It looks like we have a unanimous, we have a consensus about this again. So thank you. Thanks for your patience, all of you. I just wrote Angie to see if we can stay till 12:15. I'm not sure if she saw that text, because I'd like to
I did not see the text, but I believe we can go to 12:15.
Okay, let's, because I would,
Is there a particular rule you want to take?
Yes, I'd like to do the item number 8, because we had a statement in the beginning that I know staff wants to respond to, And I know we won't have time for the CTE discussion. So let's go ahead with action item R277496 K3 reading software licenses, amendment and continuation. And Ben Rasmussen, are you going to start off with that?
So I will just highlight that the amendments to this rule are what you can see on your screen on lines 40 through 44. I think it's been discussed from the comment earlier that this is based on Senate Bill 127 from the last session, and that staff felt that this was needed in the rule based on the changes made to that. And I think that Director Thronson and her team would be able to respond to any questions after that.
Thanks, Ben. Director Thronson, would you please add any information? And if you have information that is in response to our earlier public comment, I am saying this would be a good time to provide that information as well.
Absolutely. So within what the law calls for, the board is required to make rules around this particular item, hence why we've amended this rule as you see here. And although what is law versus what people want the law to be may not be the same thing, the law is the law. We worked with the legislature, we went with the drafter, and Senator Milner and I went through the language. So when we're saying that evidence-based and evidence-informed only applies to professional learning, that is not true. If you look at line 297, it brings that same reference to that code section to curriculum. Curriculum includes software, and therefore evidence-based and evidence-informed curriculum is required. And as you dig in more to line 318, 319, thank you, whoever's driving, you're doing a wonderful job. It says specifically provide instructional materials that are evidence-informed for core instruction and evidence-based for intervention and supplemental. Software is considered intervention/supplemental instruction and therefore falls under the definition of evidence-based. Evidence-based is defined in 53G down below and is required on 297. So we're doing what we're required to by law, and that is why we're here to update the rule.
Thank you. I appreciate that comment. Member Hymas, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you. I'm still struggling with this one. I've heard from several staff members. I've heard from people outside of the USBE offices. There's still some unclarity as some schools are being told that they have to switch over. Other schools are told that they are fine as with what they're using. I believe Dr. Thronson, correct me if I'm wrong, you acknowledged that Bridges Elementary, what Representative Stevenson mentioned yesterday in his public comment, that they were allowed to continue to use their software that has worked so well, but other schools have not been given the same privilege, I guess. I'm not sure how that would, if it's
May I respond? That
different word.
Yes.
You want to respond mid?
Oh, sorry. If you don't mind breaking them up, it's hard to like do all of it at once. I would love it.
Please, yeah, I'd love to hear it.
All right, so we have not assigned privilege to one school over another. We have been clear with Bridge that the law is the law. If they choose to go against that law, there could be potential corrective action per R277114 using state funds for things that are not in compliance with the law. So I think there's a misconception of what's been approved. Superintendent Dixon has been working closely with that particular charter. So if you want more information, she's on and can help, but that is not the case. The law is the law. We don't bend that law for anyone. And so they may use Imagine Learning, which is their software for kids that are at or above, but Imagine Learning was not qualified as a level 2 provider for supplemental instruction, given they haven't been able to provide sufficient evidence that their program meets the evidence-based required in SB 127. So there are some schools, as you said, that can continue to use their products. So we've had many schools using a different software that was approved for level 1 and level 2. And so they're able to continue as is. In those LEAs that didn't have one of those products, they are having to make a shift for at least their well below and below level learners.
Okay. Appreciate that, Chair. Do you mind if I continue?
No, please.
so even with that, there is still some obvious disagreement and or miscommunication or confusion amongst USBE staff and members of the legislature. And that's where I am right now, is I'm having a hard time saying, okay, here's staff saying this, here's the legislature who wrote the bill saying this. And some of us are saying, no, we're right on target. And others are saying, no, we're not there yet. And so I'm having a hard time moving forward with this rule, with all of this going on. And so I mean, we can hear the rest of the comments, but I'd move that staff continue work. And I know that they have been working and that it may be fruitless, but that they continue to work with the legislature and the expert policy panel established by the bill to capture the intent of the bill into rule. I'm not there yet at a place where I feel comfortable moving this forward with the concerns that have been brought up.
And I remember Davis has her hand up, but I want to say to Member Hymas, I would support that motion probably, but I don't want the staff to have to guess about the intent of the bill. I think that staff should write a rule, propose a rule consistent with the language of the law as currently written. And I think that's our charge as an agency. So I could support that if you would accept that friendly amendment. Ensure that the language of the bill is consistent in the rule. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, so you're saying that so I'm sorry, Chair, I received a text message in the middle of your.
That's all right. How dare they?
I'm going to call Angie Stallings. That's who sent it. She's on here. Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Yes, I don't care what some legislators say is the intent of the bill. I care what the language of the bill says, and that I believe that's the charge of our office, is to follow the language of the bill. And so if you wanted to amend your proposed amendment to say to ensure that the language of the bill is the language of the rule, then I'm comfortable with that.
What if we had, okay, I can do that.
That was passed by the legislature. All 359 of them, or however many there are, agreed to the actual language. Maybe they didn't share the intent of
So
some.
how do you write that, Carol? I can
ensure the language of the bill is, and I don't like captured much, but that the language of the bill is consistent with the law. Language of the rule is consistent with the law. Language of the rule right here where bill is consistent with the law.
Okay, that's the motion. I love it. Thank you.
To ensure the language of the rule is consistent with the law. That would delay it. Jennifer, can you speak to the problem with the delay?
Yes, so for the misunderstanding that happened when Senator Milner was unaware that this impacted curriculum. So when Board Member Hymas is saying that there's a disconnect, 100%. And so I do want to respect that she was unaware when we wrote the bill the way we did, that curriculum included software. Curriculum as defined in 53E-4-401 includes software. And so I'm the curriculum person for the state. I knew that, but I didn't even think about it because it's just what we do. And so that we've had this discussion, Senator Milner and I. It was not her intent to have software included, yet it is. And that's what we went back and forth, not back and forth. I went and met with the drafter and we conversed with Senator Milner. She realizes the law says what it says, which is what this rule represents. She is intending, to my knowledge, to make a change to the law, but until the law is changed, this is the law, and why staff say this is what the law says, because that's what the law says versus what people thought they were doing and what actually happened. So I hope that clears up the misconception. It's not that the law says anything different than what staff is interpreting. It is that it wasn't the intent of the bill sponsors to have that happen. It was a misunderstanding because they didn't realize curriculum meant software. So I hope that helps to clarify the
It
misunderstanding.
does. Certainly, there's no bad intent on anybody's part. I appreciate that. I'm still, my choice, and Matt accepted my friendly amendment, is that we know what the rule, the language of the rule says. We cannot accurately know the intent of everyone who voted for this bill. So we can only go with the language of the rule, is my belief. Member Davis.
I don't know that we necessarily can support the motion because the rule is written reflective of the language of the law, so I'm being told. And this is one of the 20 plus bills that requires us to write a rule consistent with the code. And we've all had conversations about 127. The intent is fabulous. Some of the details are draconian and we don't have all had conversations about that. But the problem is this detail does exist in the law. So we don't have the authority, to my knowledge, unless someone legally can help me understand, to say you don't have to implement the law, even though there was this misunderstanding by the bill sponsor. So my understanding is that for this 1 year until the bill sponsor goes back and changes this piece, the people who use Imagine Learning or anything else can still use that with their students, right? But they're also going to have to use something additional that is evidence-based, more in line with what the law says. Am I understanding that right? Or am I off legally?
And would you like to respond to that?
Yeah.
So,
I didn't hear
Oh,
if you
either one.
Jennifer, sorry.
Yes, I want to just clarify one point to make sure it's crystal. They can use the product that is allowed for that population of students. So if you're at or above, we have 4 vendors, or well, 5 vendors that you can use with those students. If you are below or well below, those students can only use the 2 softwares that have that evidence base. So if I'm a below student, I cannot use Imagine Learning. It would be against the law. I would need to use one of the other 2 options that have been approved.
Can I ask a clarifying question, Jennifer, when you said if you're below grade level, you cannot use Imagine Learning or cannot use something that's not evidence-based? Is it more accurate to say that you can't do that with your funding that comes from this bill? Is that what you're saying?
There's not funding attached for software from this bill. The funding is actually in a separate place. What code says is that for students that are below or well below, you have to use those evidence-informed and evidence-based materials. So no state funds could go towards supporting the use of products, whether that's core instruction products or intervention supplemental products, without the potential of corrective action in terms of being compliant with the law.
I may follow up, Chair.
Yes.
So it's not a situation whereas they can still use the product they like as long as they're also using this other evidence-based approved list.
Correct.
They have to
They cannot.
completely stop. They can't use any public funds or just funds associated to certain pieces of code.
It would be, it's a state law to not use that curriculum with those students, so state funds would not be appropriate use for this purpose of any kind.
It would be extraordinarily difficult for an LEA to distinguish. We're not using any state funds for this. We're using only local funds, and that would be, I think, a fiction to pretend that they're separating those funds. But that's my opinion. Member Matt.
Yeah, again, I appreciate what I'm hearing here. It sounds, again, to speak to this motion, it just sounds like this is not ready to come forth at this time. And I get the complexities on both sides. I really do. And we haven't even discussed the effect size yet that was put into law that is controversial, to say the least, right? There's just too much going on. I just have a hard time saying, yeah, let's pass this rule, let's get things going, and when we're not ready yet. So I'm going to again speak to this motion. Thank you.
So I still have to, and Cindy, I see your hand again, but I have to ask Jen, I think I asked Jennifer a while ago, what's the urgency? Are other LEAs needing to change their practices or move on with this? Are we holding them up?
Oh, great question. There's no urgency. We've already enacted this the way that the bill requires us to enact it. The rule is just to be in line with SB 127 saying the board shall make rules. So this is how we are enacting the law, and this just represents that. So if the committee doesn't want to approve the rule as it is right now, it is the current state of the law. We have to act in that way as staff. And so until the law changes, whether we have the rule in place is really just to be in compliance with the law.
So having said that, what you're saying is we now have a practice that's been implemented consistent with the law that's inconsistent with our rule as it currently is.
In terms of, we just wanted to increase the transparency of, yes, this has been implemented in this program as required by law.
And
Yes.
but the rule still says something else. Is that right?
It just doesn't include that evidence-based piece.
I see. Okay, that makes me feel better. Member Davis.
Well, my understanding is we have zero flexibility here. None. The law is the law, no matter how imperfect it is, and it has to be implemented. And we are supposed to write a rule that reflects the law for double transparency that this is actually happening in the LEAs. So until the law changes in the legislative session, there's nothing we can go back and revisit or change or amend, other than in our main board meeting, requesting for changes to be made in the legislative session. We can add it to our policy request changes, but we're still, for this year, beholden to this law. And this rule reflects the law.
And
as much as we may like it or hate it, I don't know that we have 1 ounce of movement on this one.
And I don't know that anybody needs to add to that, because I think that's what several people have been saying, Jennifer, Angie, Cindy. So I think that's the sense of it. So do you have a motion with that notion in mind? Do you have a motion, Member Davis? Oh, no, I guess we are on Member Hymas's motion.
Yeah, we probably need to vote, and then
Yes, we do.
From there.
So the motion from Member Hymas is that staff work with the legislature and the expert policy panel established by SB 127 to ensure that language of the rule is consistent with the law. And that's SB 127 from the year 2022. So that's the motion, yes. To clarification, go ahead.
Yeah, question for Member Hymas. Do you feel that do you suspect or feel that there is language in this rule that is inconsistent with the law? Because if so, then that would change my opinion. But if we just don't like the law, which one is it? Then I feel like we got to move forward.
I admittedly, I don't know I haven't taken a deep dive in the law to look back and forth. I do believe there's some inconsistencies as I've been talking with people that I believe should be looked at closer.
Okay.
Okay. So we have the motion that Member Hymas made. It's on our screen. I repeated it. Would members please vote? Shoot. So
there's a tie.
There's a tie, so the motion fails. So do we have another motion? I'll move that the committee, I'll get my cheat sheet. The committee approves R277-496. Continue and approve R277 496, draft one on first reading forward to the board for continuation and approval on second and final reading. Please vote. Any further discussion, I should say? Okay, please vote.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry, further discussion. Member Davis.
I just want one last guarantee that there is nothing superfluous in this bill that is not already in code. Can we have a final guarantee from staff or someone?
We took the language basically right out of the code if you look at it so that it was consistent with there. We haven't added to. I think you can rest fairly comfortable with that question.
Member Hymas, final comment?
Yeah, I'm just hoping that as this most likely moves to the next level, to the next step, that if we could ask staff to look into this to see, like I said, I'm hearing on both sides that there's it's right in line and others are saying it's inconsistent. We need to make sure of this. I hate it when people, especially if something is cut and dry as a law, if they're saying it's inconsistent, obviously there's some concern somewhere. So if they can just continue to work on this, even as it moves to the next level, that if there are inconsistencies, we can address them.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. Member or Jennifer.
Yeah, I just want to let you know, we do have a meeting with Senator Milner in a week and a half, I think it is. So about this particular part of the bill. So that action is happening and will continue to happen in support of the committee's request.
And last comment, Superintendent Dixon.
Thank you, Chair Lair. One of the things that you could also do is, I know we just had yesterday in our general board meeting, some legislative priorities, but by next board meeting, having had those meetings with the prior sponsors, perhaps we could suggest something that Deputy Stallings could bring forward in that legislative part so that it's something you as a board could prioritize for changes to be made for next session.
Thank you. Appreciate that suggestion. I think that we've read the motion. We've had the final comments. Would members please vote to pass this rule as written or not? And
it's 3-1.
3-1, with the nay vote being Member Hymas. Thank you. Thank you for your attention to detail, and thank you for your participation. I am sad to say, and I really am sad to say, because we had so much to discuss. I would have loved a discussion on the last two items, but we will not have time today. So I'm sure we'll have an opportunity later. Thank you to our staff. Every month, I'm just amazed at how they come together and help us be prepared for these meetings and support us. So thank you again. Thanks to board members for your participation and your preparation. And have a great week. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair.